Asmat Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmat Paramagurubhyo Namaha, Asmat Sarvagurubhyo Namaha. So we're continuing on with our discussion of Mumuksupadi by Pillai Lokacharya with commentary by Manavala Mamunigal. And this is a discussion that we have just so that we can get up to speed with the intricacies of the book. And of course, we have on Saturdays, we have our proper Kalakshepam class with Dr. Alwar, where he's going line by line through the commentary. But what we want to do is try to get a more of an overview of the book by going through a little faster. So we decided that we would look at the translation into English by Patricia Mummy, and also when we get to the sutras themselves, we've only just started the introduction. When we get to the sutras themselves, we'll be looking also at a short English commentary by P.B. Anangacharya of Kanchipuram, which is there on acharya.org on the internet. So let's have a look at the text. Last time we finished up to this point of the introduction. So now we get to the little bit of a discussion in the introduction that she gives of the difference between the interpretation of the three mantras, and the three mantras are again, of course, the Tira mantra, Astakshara Tira mantra, the Dwaya mantra, and the Krishna Charma Sloka. And what is the details of the different interpretations between the Tenacharya Sampradayam and the Deshika Sampradayam, so Vedanta Deshikas and Manavala Muni schools, the Sri Rangam and country schools, we can call them, or the northern and southern schools. So this is not the place to go into an exhaustive explanation of the doctrinal differences between the Tengalai and Vadagalai schools, as seen in the works of Manavala Mamuni and Vedanta Deshika. And of course, we were discussing before in our last sessions how there are these different Rahasya Granthas. There are these written by the different schools. So we have, for instance, Mumuksupadi and Srivachanabhushanam Acharya Hridayam, written by the 10 Acharya Sampradaya, and they have Acharyas, and we have Vedanta Deshika writing his Chilarai Rahasyangal, and also his Rahasya Trayasaram. And all of these deal with these three mantras and their esoteric meanings. Here we must confine ourselves to the issues that arise in interpreting the three mantras. Though most of Manavala Mamuni's differences with Vedanta Deshika's interpretation have been noted in the footnotes in the text, so as we go through, a brief overview will be helpful by way of introduction. It is significant that the interpretation of the Tira mantra, the mantra with the longest history, and remember we went through the introduction previous to this, where she explained the history in Sanskrit Shastras and also in the Divya Prabandham, the Tamil Shastras, of the Tira mantra, and the oldest body of traditional interpretation. There are no real points of dispute. Okay, so that's nice. So between the different subsects of Sri Vaishnavism, there's no real points of dispute, she's saying, between the understanding of the Tira mantra, Om Namo Narayana, Astakshara mantra. In passing, of course, Vedanta Deshika will refer to the performance of property as Sadyopaya, which is accompanied by Angas, a view not shared by Manavala Mamuni and the authors of the Sri Rangam tradition. Now, what does this mean? There's a verse. Maybe I can show you that verse even. Okay, so here's the verse which we're talking about. There's a verse, and I'm not quite sure exactly where this verse comes from. I believe that it comes from a scripture called Bhakti Ratnavali by Vishnupuri, who is an unknown author of unknown sampradaya. But anyhow, this is a verse. Anukulyasya sankalpaha pratikulyasya varjanam rakshishya titi vishvaso goptritve varanam tata atmanikshepa karpanye shad vidha sharanagatahi. So Shadvida Sharanagati here means that there are these that property or Sharanagati is sixfold, and it has these six divisions. So the divisions of Sharanagati, it says here, the divisions of Sharanagati are the acceptance of those things favorable to devotional service, rejection of unfavorable things, the conviction that Krishna or Srimanarayana will give protection, the acceptance of the Lord as one's guardian or master, humility, and full surrender. So here, karpanya means, can also mean hopelessness or helplessness. So humility in that sense. And Atmanikshepa is full surrender. So there's a difference. There's a difference between the interpretation of the Kanchi school and the Sri Rangam school of Sri Vaishnavism on these points. So Vedanta Deshika and the Vadagalai school of Sri Vaishnavism accept that there are these six things. One of them, Atmanikshepa, is the full surrender. Everybody accepts that Atmanikshepa is full surrender. It means full surrender. But the question is, what are these other five things? Are they angas in the sense, or limbs in the sense of prerequisites, or are they not prerequisites? Now, the Southern school, the Tengalaya Acharyas, will say that they're not prerequisites because there's no prerequisite to surrender. There's no prerequisite to surrender, you just surrender. But Vedanta Deshika emphasizes that he says that these are prerequisites, that these things have to, we have to give up, we have to accept everything favorable for serving the Lord. We have to give up things which are unfaithful. We have to do these things before we can surrender. They're a prerequisite to surrender. So that is the difference. So what it basically works out, there's two different types of surrender. There's what we call active surrender or cooperative surrender, and there's passive surrender. Passive surrender means that we simply rely on the causeless grace of the Lord, and we don't do anything else. We don't think that our actions are helping ourselves to surrender more, or that any action is necessary for surrender. We see this also in other religions like Christianity, where we have, for instance, we have the Roman Catholic Church, and we have the Protestant churches. So they have the Roman Catholics. They're into surrendering to God, but they say that there has to be a mixture of not only faith in God, but there also has to be works. The individual has to do certain works and cooperate with God. And the Protestants say, no, only faith in God is important, and works by the individual are not important. Now, it's not to say that the Catholics and Protestants don't both do works. They both do works. And it's also not to say in Sri Vaishnavism that Vadagalais and that Tengalais don't do anything. They don't do any devotional works. They do. All Vaishnavas, we all perform devotional works. The question is whether we consider those devotional works to be necessary, or the efforts that we put in to be necessary or not, whether they are necessary to achieve the goal. So there's an example also given in Krishna Lila, where we have Mother Yasoda binding Krishna. Krishna was naughty, and Mother Yasoda got a rope and tried to tie him up. Each time she tried to tie him up, the rope was 2 inches too short. She kept adding rope and adding rope and adding rope, and it was still always 2 inches too short. So some Vaishnavacharyas of the Gaudiya Sampradaya have given the analogy that these 2 inches, 1 inch is the determination and the effort of the devotee, of the Vaishnava, to serve God, and the other inch is the mercy of God. So we have to have the mercy of God, but we also have to perform works of surrender and devotional service and in order to cooperate with him, right? In order to tie Krishna fully, in order to attain the goal, both those things have to be there, and not just the mercy of God, but also the cooperation of the individual. Another example of this we can take in the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, that there was a householder disciple of Ramanuja called Dasarathi, and he was considered to be a great Vaishnava. He and his wife were great Vaishnavas, and Ramanuja used to give them as examples of great Vaishnavas when he would give his lectures. And so some of the sannyasi disciples or the renounced disciples of Ramanuja used to complain about this. Why are you giving as an example of a good Vaishnava? Why are you giving a householder as an example of a good Vaishnava when there are many good Vaishnavas who are sannyasis also? So why specifically, single out a householder as a good Vaishnava? Because being a householder, he must be attached somehow to some material things. He's not as renounced as those in the fourth ashram, in the sannyas ashram. So Ramanuja instructed some of his disciples to go to the house of Dasarathi and his wife, and to steal away the gold jewels, to steal away the gold from Dasarathi's wife and bring it back to the ashram. He proposed that they go do this just to see how attached Dasarathi and his wife were to the ornaments, the gold ornaments, or the riches that they had. So during the night, these disciples of Ramanuja, on his order, went there, and they saw that they were sleeping, and they began to, Dasarathi's wife was lying on her side. They began to take the gold ornaments from one side of her body, so her bangles on one side and her earring on one side. They began to take from one side. Now she noticed in her sleep, she feigned sleeping, and she pretended to still be asleep, because she knew that these people are my god brothers. These people are also disciples of Ramanuja. So if they are taking something from me, if they're taking this gold from me, they must have a good purpose. They must have a good purpose in, so she didn't mind that they were taking the gold. So she didn't want to wake up because she thought she would frighten them away, and they wouldn't be able to take the gold. So she thought instead that, let me pretend to be asleep and pretend to turn over in my sleep so that they can take the gold on the other side of my body also. So she tried to cooperate with them without alerting them to the fact that she was still asleep. So she began to turn in her sleep, as if in her sleep, so that they could take the gold from the other side. They became frightened that she would wake up, and they ran away. They ran outside, and they looked. Ramanuja had told them, after you steal the gold, then you see what is the reaction of Dasarathi and his wife. So at that time, after they left without taking the gold from the other side of her body, she woke up, and she woke up her husband, and they both discussed this matter. So she said that I think that they must have been sent here by Ramanuja to take the gold for some reason. So I was cooperating and beginning to turn in my sleep so that they could take the gold from the other part of my body. And her husband said, no, you should have not tried to cooperate. You should have simply been fully surrendered, instead of trying to have this cooperative surrender or active surrender. You should have had passive surrender and should have completely surrendered to God. You should have completely surrendered to them, and just they would have, if they wanted the gold from the other side of your body, they could have turned you. They would have turned you and taken it from the other side. So in this way, they had a discussion between themselves about the merits and demerits of active and passive surrender. So when Ramanuja's disciples were looking from the window and watching to see their reaction was not at all about losing the gold. They were not at all attached to material things, but they were only attached to whether we should surrender to God in one way or surrender to God in the other way. There's really, we can't say that surrendering to God is a bad thing. So either way is a good way. And so this is the, but still we have the difference between the Wadagalai and Tengalai schools, as they see one way as being slightly better than the other way. Let's not have any arguments about this, because all the Sri Vaishnavas are all surrendered to God. They're all surrendered to God. The question is only between the different schools what the emphasis is on. So the emphasis in the Tengalai school is on full surrender, complete and causeless grace of God, and causeless surrender, or passive surrender. And the emphasis in the Wadagalai school is on active surrender, of doing something to cooperate with God as a form of surrender. This has been known, and the analogy given in the normal analogy given is called Marketa Nyaya and Marjila Nyaya. So there is a Marketa, there's a monkey, and the mother monkey has a baby, and the baby clings onto the back of the mother. So the baby has to cling on to the fur of the mother on the back as the mother goes from tree to tree. If the monkey lets go, if the monkey doesn't make any effort, then he'll fall down, the baby monkey. He will fall off. He has to make some effort in order to be saved by the mother. Whereas on the other side, the Marjila Nyaya, the cat, the mother cat comes along, and the baby kitten is completely helpless and doesn't do anything. And the mother cat just simply picks up the baby kitten in the mouth and saves the baby. So the cat and monkey philosophy, or the cat and monkey analogy, Nyaya, is there to explain the difference between monkey, the active or cooperative grace, and cat, the passive or causeless grace of the Lord. So these are the two differences. So in getting back to this verse, the verse says, Anukulyasya sankalpa pratikulyasya varjana, and it gives these 6 things which are divisions or parts of Sharanagati or property. These six things. So the question becomes whether these 6 things are prerequisites or not. Are they prerequisites? Do we have to do all these things? Do we have to perform all these actions or non-actions before Sharanagati, or are these things which will naturally occur and come out of our Sharanagati, out of our property, right? So of course the Wadagalai Sampradaya says that these are prerequisites. These are what we call angas of property. And the Tengalai Sampradaya says, no, they are not prerequisites to property. We do property, and after property, these things will naturally manifest. After surrendering to Sriman Narayana, naturally we want to do what he wants us to do. We want to not do the things that he doesn't want us to do in the scriptures. We accept him as our guardian, as our master. We have great faith in him. We feel helplessness and hopelessness. These things are all part of they are post-requisites. They come out of the process of performing full surrender to the Lord. So that's all. It's really a very, very small distinction. And anyway, getting back to our book on explanation of the differences, let's just continue on. So sorry for that aside. So that's what was described here in this sentence. In passing, of course, Vedanta Deshika will refer to the performance of property in this as Satyopaya, which is accompanied by angas. So in other words, there are prerequisites. Property is the upaya. It is the method of attaining the Lord, of attaining moksha. And the angas, or the different limbs of this, the prerequisites for it, right, are given in that sloka. So there are these 5 prerequisites that are given in this sloka about the 6 angas, the 6 divisions of Sharanagati, right? And it says here a view which is not shared by Manavala Mahamuni and the authors of the Sri Rangam tradition or the Tengalai tradition. So now we can sort of understand that. right? That they have a slight difference of emphasis on the way property is done, or on property itself. So the latter will emphasize that property is merely knowledge of Swarupa. Knowledge of Swarupa, what does that mean? Or a mental choosing of the Lord as the upaya. Upaya means the method or the means of liberation, and is itself neither an act nor an upaya. So simply a recognition or a mere knowledge of the Swarupa. What is the real Swarupa of the soul? The real Swarupa of the soul is complete and absolute subservience and dependence on Sriman Narayana, on the Lord. So if we're completely dependent upon him, it means we're not dependent on anything else. If we're completely dependent upon him only, it means we're not dependent on anything else, even any actions that we take. If we're dependent on actions that we take in the form of karma yoga, jnana yoga, or even bhakti yoga, then we're not completely dependent on him. We're dependent on him. So the difference between active and passive surrender is that those persons who believe in cooperative grace or cooperative surrender, they believe that they are dependent on the Lord, but they're also dependent upon some action that they do. And here it's said that somebody may object and say, or even if Lord Rama says you have to say once Tavasmiti Chayachite, in Ramacharma Sloka, Lord Rama says, just say one time that I'm yours, and also I will save you. So isn't that an action? Isn't property itself an action? Is property itself an action? No. The Sri Rangamacharyas, the Tengalacharyas say, no, property itself is not an action. It's simply a recognition of our true nature. When we realize what our true nature is, that we're completely subservient to the Lord and totally dependent upon him. If we're totally dependent on him, we're not dependent on anything else. We just have to understand that. We just have to recognize that. So it's a knowledge. It's a mental thing. Once we come to that realization, that is property. That is property. The property is the realization that God alone is the way. He is the method. He is the path. He himself is going to give us liberation. Everything about the process of property is because of him only, and not because of anything that we do or don't do. So this is the point being made. It's a small point, but this is the point being made that Sri Rangamacharyas are saying that mentality that thinks that we are dependent on the Lord, but we also have to perform some actions ourselves. We have to put in some efforts ourselves, like the baby monkey clinging to the mother's back. That involves a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of false ego, a tiny bit of ego, a tiny portion of ego that I think that I have to do something to cooperate with God, to get his grace. To get his grace, I have to perform some works, right? Lord Krishna says, Manmana bhava madbhakto majjaji mamnamat maskuru mammi vaishasi satyam te patijane priyosime. The sloka before the Charma sloka of Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, 1865, and it's repeated also in another part of the Bhagavad Gita. He says, think of me, bow down before me, do all these things. This is considered to be part of Bhakti Yoga. So we bow down to the Lord, we try to meditate on the Lord, we do all these things. But in actual fact, we see in other Charma slokas, for instance, these things are also negated. For instance, in the Varaha Charma sloka, the idea of always remember me, thus you'll come to me, which Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, is also not a total prerequisite for attaining moksha. Because Lord Varaha says, and Ramanuja himself had this doubt and asked Varadaraj Perumal, the deity in Kanchipuram, he asked 6 questions to them. One of them was, do I have to remember you at the time of death? So in most Vaishnava Sampradayas, they read Bhagavad Gita, and Bhagavad Gita says, Yam yam vapi smaran bhavan, whatever you think of at the time of death, that you will attain. So if you think of something else, if you think of the devatas, you'll go to the devatas. If you think of the pitris, you'll go to the ancestors. You'll go wherever you want to go, you'll go. If you think of me, you'll come to me, Krishna says. If you think of Sriman Narayana, you will attain Sriman Narayana. You will go to Sri Vaikuntha. So, but what if you don't think of him at the time of death? Lord Varaha comes and he says, when you're dying, and you're in a coma, you can't think of anything. You're just like we were discussing just before about Sushupti, very, very deep sleep. What if somebody dies in coma? What if a Sri Vaishnava dies in coma? He doesn't have to remember the Lord at the time of death, because Lord Varaha says, if you remembered me in this lifetime, if you worship me in this lifetime, he said, at the time of death, when you cannot remember me, maybe you can remember him. That would be very great. But if you cannot remember him, he says, Aham smarami mad bhakta. Aham smarami means I will remember you. I will remember my bhakta. I will remember my devotee. So this was something that Ramanuja, after reading the Gita, he understood that the Gita says that we should remember the Lord at the time of death, otherwise we don't attain the Lord. Even Arjuna says, what happens to that person who performs bhakti yoga, but at the time of death, he doesn't complete that bhakti yoga. Bhakti yoga isn't finished unless we remember God at the time of death. Antima Smriti. What happens to that person? And Lord Krishna says that person will be born again. That person will be born in a family of great Vaishnavas or devotees or yogis. He will be born in a family of transcendentalists, and he will be naturally attracted to bhakti yoga again, and he will finish it in his next life. But property isn't like that. Property is, at the end of this very life, the Lord saves us. No doubt about it. So if one performs property, it's better than bhakti yoga, because bhakti yoga may take several lifetimes, whereas property, at the end of this life, the Lord promises to take us. So although some people may misunderstand the interpretation of Krishna Chanma Sloka, Bhagavad Gita 1866, to mean only that we give up things which are adharmic, or we give up the idea of agency, that we give up sarvadharmam pritita, that we give up the agency of think that we are performing the actions. In actual fact, it's the actions itself which are also given up, in the sense that we understand that God himself performs the action and we don't perform the action. So there is nothing that we do. We don't do anything to that will lead us to liberation. No, it's only the Lord himself who does that. The Lord himself will take us there. So anyway, this is the idea. So we are choosing the Lord as the means. The Lord is the means, and not any action that we do, either positive or to avoid negative things. However, this difference does not really arise out of specific disagreements of interpretation of the Tira mantra. So really, this doesn't come up in discussing the Tira mantra. So when we're talking about the Tira mantra prakaranam, we'll see that that Vedanta Deshika and Manavala Mahamuni and Pila Lokacharya, they're all on the same page. They're all agreeing on exactly about the Tira mantra. It will come up later on when we discuss the Dvaya mantra and Charma Sloka. So, however, this difference does not really rise with specific disagreements in interpretation of the Tira mantra as so much as out of a more general disagreement on the nature of property, as I said, the cat and monkey ideas. This same disagreement will be noticeable in their respective interpretations of the Dvaya mantra and the Charma Sloka as well, because the Dvaya mantra we'll go more deeply into when we're discussing Dvaya, more deeply into property, and the Charma Sloka also. So though the meaning of the Tira mantra is not in dispute, there is an important difference between the two schools on how it is used. Okay, so we've understood this already. Dr. Tirunarayan, Dr. Alwar have explained to us about this. The Vedanta Deshika and the Vadagalai tradition, following him, feel that the pranava, or the Omkara, being a Vedic mantra, and Omkara is considered to be the essence of the Vedas, right, is not to be given to women or members of non-twice-born castes, right? So although there's no difference between the Vadagalai and Tengalai schools on the meaning of the Tira Mantra, there is a difference on how they give the Tira Mantra and how they use the Tira Mantra in society. So because of certain social rules prohibiting the chanting of Omkara by non-twice-born castes, means males, anybody who's not a twice-born Brahmin, Kshatriya, or Vaishya. Nowadays, basically, we're talking about non-Brahmins. Those persons, non-male Brahmins, right, or ladies, right? Therefore, because there's this rule in Dharma Shastra, we can look in some Dharma Shastras that say this, right, like Manu Samhita. So they don't give the Omkara to those people. So we see, for instance, in the Divya Prabandham, sometimes the Alwas speak of Namo Narayana or Namo Narayanaya, and they don't actually include the Omkara, or they give a different syllable instead of Omkara. They give Amkara, and of course the letter A refers to Sriman Narayana, so that's also possible to give this Amkara. So Deshika argues that this practice in his Rahasya Saram. So if we read Rahasya Saram, which would be a good thing to do because Vedanta Deshika also gives us a lot of wonderful esoteric meanings for the three mantras. He quotes the Naradiya Kalpam. So Naradiya Kalpam is Kalpam means rituals or a method of worshiping the Lord, and Naradiya means given by Narada, the sage Narada, who is of course a great acharya and bhakti yogi himself, which recommends giving only Namo Narayana or Namo Narayanaya to women and Sudras. So Vedanta Deshika quotes this in Rahasya Saram as a pramana, as a proof that this is what should be done. He also appeals to the Alwars, who never use the pranava when referring to this mantra or to the name of Narayana. So we can look, if we look through the 4,000 Nalaya Divya Prabandham, and several of the Alwars were not coming in the Brahmin class, although we do have Vishnu Chitta, Peri Alwar, the father of Andal, foster father of Andal, he was a Brahmin. We have King Kulashekara Alwar, he was a Kshatriya. So we do have some Alwars who did come in the higher castes, in the Traivanika castes. But we also have Tirapan Alwar, who was a low caste person. And we have some other of the Alwars who are considered of low caste. Now, we don't criticize any Alwar for whatever caste they come in. We don't look at their caste when we see only their supreme devotion and bhakti to the Lord. But still, it's interesting to see that none of the Alwars have mentioned the Omkara, which is, of course, they were writing in Tamil, so they did, but still they didn't mention this Omkara. Who never use pranava when referring to this mantra or to the name of Narayana. The Tengalaya Acharyas to this day feel differently. So, the Tenacharya Sampradaya, this is why Pillai Lokacharya and Manavala Mamuni, especially Pillai Lokacharya at that time, who was almost contemporary to Vedanta Deshika, he encountered some problems and some criticism from other people in the Sri Vaishnava community who criticized him for saying some things which seemed to be against the Varnashram regulations of not allowing women or Sudras or those who are not Traivarnika males to chant Omkara. So this is, this can be a criticism, right? So when Sri Vachanabhushana was written, after Pilalokacharya wrote Mumuksupadi, he wrote Sri Vachanabhushana, and after in the Sri Vachanabhushana he says some things like this, and therefore he got in trouble with the community in Sri Rangam, and in fact some people went to Lord Ranganatha and complained against him. Look, he's saying some things which are seemingly against Shastra, because Shastra says women and Shudras shouldn't chant Omkar. So then the Lord communicated through the priests of the temple that he should be brought before the Lord and he should explain why he has said these things which seem to be against the scriptures. So they went to get Pilalokacharya. Pilalokacharya at the time could not be found. And what happened was that his brother, Alagiya Manavala Perumal Nayanar, his younger brother, was found instead and brought to come before Lord Ranganatha and explain these things. So on the way to the temple, the Lord was going in his parapada, in his procession, Nam Perumal, the Utsava, the processional deity or festival deity of Ranganatha, was going around the 4 streets. And what Alagiya Manavala Perumal Nayanar did, the younger brother of Pilalokacharya, is he explained this to the Lord, to Nam Perumal, as he was going around in the streets. That explanation was then written down and forms a book called Acharya Hridaya. So we can look at that some other time, but that gives the explanation of how the Tengalai Acharyas, starting with Pilalokacharya, can dare to say that it's possible to give Omkara or to do certain things, to do certain things which may seem to be against certain Varnashram law or rules in the Shastra in the society of Sri Vaishnavas, right? That for instance, persons who so for Tengalai Acharyas, it's a rule that they give the full Astakshara mantra, and the Tengalais say we must give this full mantra because the Shastra itself says Om Namo Narayanaya iti mantropasakaha Vaikuntha Bhuvana Lokam Gamishyati. Gamishyati means he will attain, he will go to Vaikuntha Bhuvana Lokam, he will go to Vaikuntha. The person who is Om Namo Narayanaya Mantropasakaha, who is the upasaka, the worshipper or the user or the chanter of Om Namo Narayanaya, will go to Vaikuntha. It never says in the Shastra, Am Namo Narayanaya iti Mantropasakaha. It never says Namo Narayanaya iti Mantropasakaha. It never says Namo Narayana without Aya Upasakaha. It says Om Namo Narayanaya. So this is the Tengalai's point. The Tengalai's point is we go against the Shastra itself, the more important Shastra, the Veda Shastra, the Narayana Upanishad, which gives the Astakshara mantra. It's the source of the Astakshara mantra. It goes directly against that if we don't give the proper mantra, Om Namo Narayanaya. If we change the mantra in some way, for instance, here, Vedanta Deshika is quoting the Naradiya Kalpam. Naradiya Kalpam says, what does he say here? To give only Namo Narayana or Namo Narayanaya. Now, of course, this is really an academic discussion because if we chant Namo Narayana or we chant Namo Narayanaya, the word Narayana is there. As long as the word Narayana is there, we know that from the Bhagavatam, the story of Ajamila. Ajamila in the Bhagavatam, in the 6th canto of Bhagavatam, he chanted only Narayana. He didn't chant Narayanaya. He didn't chant Namo Narayanaya. He didn't chant Am Namo Narayanaya. He didn't chant Om Namo Narayanaya. He simply chanted Narayana and he was saved by the Lord. So we know that if you chant any one of these things, or if you remember the Lord at the time of death, you will certainly go to the Lord. So it's really academic because any one of these mantras will take it. So it is not that the Tengalai Acharyas say that the Vadagalaya Acharyas are giving Am Namo Narayana or Namo Narayana or Namo Narayanaya, and that will not work for us to go to for those persons to go to moksha. That also can take us to moksha. That also can take us to moksha. The question is, should we be absolutely fidelis? Should we have absolute fidelity to the scripture when it says, Om Namo Narayana iti mantro pasakaha? Should we give Om Namo? It is akara, ukara, makara iti. It's mentioned. Or should we change that in some way? So if, for instance, now, according to Naradiya Kalpa and Vedanta Deshika quoting Naradiya Kalpa, you can simply give Namo Narayana or Namo Narayanaya. But in that case, it is not an 8-syllable mantra. It is only a 7-syllable mantra in the sense of Namo Narayanaya, Namo Narayanaya, Namo Narayanaya, right? 7 syllables. Or Namo Narayana, 6 syllables. So it's not 8 syllables, it's only 7 or 6 syllables if you give it in this way. To circumvent that idea, of course, the Vadagalacharyas and Vedanta Deshika have suggested that we use the Bija mantra Am. Am Namo Narayanaya is normally what the Vadagalacharyas are giving to ladies and to Sudras, of those persons who are not born in Trivarnika males in Trivarnika families, Brahmin, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, males. So, in that way, they keep the 8 syllables, but still, the Tengalayacharya say, still, you haven't actually given the mantra which is stated in the scriptures, in the Vedas, the Narayana Upanishad, to be given. So anyway, it's a very small point, right? And as I said, chanting simply the name of Narayana took Ajamil to moksha. So it's not... it's only a matter of emphasis that the Tengalayacharya's emphasized to follow more the Narayana Upanishad, the Shruti, and the Vadagalacharyas emphasized more to follow the Dharma Shastra of Manu and this other book, Naradiya Kalpam. So, which is more important? That's emphasized by different groups. So anyway, the Tengalayacharya to this day feel differently. They do not hesitate to give the full 8 syllables of the Tira mantra with the pranava, with Om, to women and to Sudras, as well as Brahmin males. Right? What to speak of foreigners. Okay, so they're even giving a Astakshara mantra with Omkara to foreigners, to any person, to everybody. And the Tengalais also have this story that they say that Ramanuja, after going and learning the meaning of Astakshara mantra from the other mantras from Goshti Purna, that he climbed the Gopuram, even though he was told by his guru not to give the secret mantra to anybody. He climbed the Gopuram and gathered a crowd around him and gave everybody the mantra, irrespective of their caste or their gender. Om Namo Narayana to everybody. So this you'll see if you read the story of Ramanuja's life, or if you see the movie about Ramanuja, you will see that this scene. Of course, the Vadagai Sampradaya people, they may have a different version of this story. They may say something slightly different. But anyhow, this is one of the anecdotes that the Tengalaycharyas and the Tengalais usually quote also, that Ramanuja did this himself. So to be completely frank, we don't know. We have no idea how Ramanuja gave the mantra to ladies and to Shudras. We don't know, but we do know that later on, at the time of Vedanta Deshika and Pilalokacharya, there was a little bit of a emphasis of one way to do it and another way to do it, and that's all we know. And that became part of the doctrines of the slight differences between the Vadagalais and Tengalais later on. So Manavala Muni quickly dismisses any possible support for Vedanta Deshika's view in Churna 28. So later on, when we start the book, we're going to get to Churna 28. We're going to get to when they say Churna means the sutra. The Manipravala sutras are called Churnas or Churnikas. And in number 28, he's going to see that Manavala Mamuni is going to quote the Narayana Atharva Shira Upanishad, which I just quoted from, to establish that the 8-syllable mantra includes Omkara. He flatly states that any other way of construing this mantra is not Vedic and ought to be rejected. It's not Vedic and ought to be rejected. So that's the stand of the Tengalaycharyas. the stand of the Vadagalaya Acharyas, of course, is to follow Vedanta Deshika. Vedanta Deshika has quoted from Naradiya Kalpam, that's also a Shastra, and he can quote from Manu Dharma Shastra to say that women and Sudras should not be given the Omkara. So it's really just a different way of looking at things and quoting from slightly different Shastras. When there is a difference between Shastras, then we can decide to go with one interpretation or another interpretation, and there's really very, very slight difference. And it's as I said, ultimately one is chanting the name Narayana, and one is initiated into the name of Narayana, and ultimately that will work to save us. So in the interpretation of Dwayam, so that's all about the Astakshara mantra. So there's really so just to summarize again, there's no difference in the understanding of the meaning of the Astakshara mantra between Vadagalais and Tengalais. There is only a difference in the use of it, and who gets it, and how they get it, and how they use it, right? So for Tengalais, everybody the same, and for Vadagalais, some distinction based on the rules in Dharma Shastra and some other Shastras like Naradiya Kalpam, and also on the prayers of the Alvars. Don't forget the prayers of the Alvars. When we look at the prayers of the Alvars, can we say that they're also a proof, right? If the Alvars thought that we needed to chant Omkara before Namo Narayana or Namo Narayana, they would have also put it there, but they didn't. So this is also a type of proof. So it just depends on which Shastra we're going to emphasize over what, and what point we're going to try to emphasize. But these are very, very small differences. So now coming to the Dwaya mantra. In the interpretation of the Dwaya mantra, there's really only one major point of dispute, right? Right. That regarding the position of Shri or Lakshmi, all agree that Narayana, in the first sentence of Dwayam, refers to the Lord as the Upaya, or the means of salvation. He is the means of salvation. So what is the first sentence? The Dwaya mantra, again, has two sentences. That's why it's called Dwaya. Dwa means two in Sanskrit. So Dwaya is a mantra made up of two sentences. So what are those sentences? The first sentence is Shriman Narayana Charano Sharanam Prapadye. Second sentence, Srimate Narayanaya Namaha. Okay, so all would agree that the word Narayana, which comes in both sentences, and also Shri also comes in both sentences. So we can take note of that. The word Narayana in the first sentence of the Dwaya refers to the Lord as the Upaya. So in the first sentence, Sriman Narayana Charano, the word Charano is in dual. In Sanskrit, there's singular, dual, and plural. So what is the translation of the first sentence? I surrender unto the 2 feet. Charano means 2 feet of Sriman Narayana. Sriman Narayana means Lord Narayana associated with the goddess Sri Devi. Because Sri Devi is very important for both Vadagalais and Tengalais. Why? Again, she is the Purushakara. She acts as an intermediary between, or a mediator between both the soul and God. She is the mother to the souls, and she is the consort or the divine wife of Sriman Narayana. So she as the wife of Sriman Narayana, she can appeal to him not to punish the souls who are sinful, right? And as the mother of the sinful souls, she can also appeal to them to take shelter of the Supreme Lord as their only refuge. So she acts as a mediator between. So in both the Vadagalai Sampradaya and the Tengalai Sampradaya, right, Sri Devi or Mahalakshmi is very, very important. And in fact, she is the first Acharya after the Lord himself in the Guru Parampara. So Narayana is there in the first sentence. The first sentence says we surrender unto the 2 feet of Narayana, Sriman Narayana. Sriman Narayana means the Lord associated with Mahalakshmi. right, with Mahalakshmi, right? But we notice in the word Charanal, 2 feet, we surrender to the 2 feet of Lord Narayana. So another interpretation would be Sriman Narayana is the Lord and Mahalakshmi, the Lord and Mahalakshmi, that we're surrendering also to Mahalakshmi. And of course, we've discussed this also in Sri Vachana Bhushanam and some other things. It's not that when you surrender to the Lord, you're only surrendering to the Lord. Just like when you're employed as a servant in a house of a master, it means you make a contract with the master and the master employs you, right? But still, you take orders also from the mistress of the house, from the lady of the house. Even though you don't have a contract, you haven't surrendered completely to the lady of the house, but she is also above you and she is giving you orders. So like that. So there's no question. There's no question amongst Bodhigalais and Tengalais, amongst all Sri Vaishnavas, we're all also surrendered to Mahalakshmi. We're all also surrendered to Mahalakshmi. Mahalakshmi is very great, and she is our mother, and she is the divine consort of Sriman Narayana, and we are all surrendered to her. But in the Dwaya mantra, Charano is mentioned. Only 2 feet are mentioned. So the 2 feet of Lord Narayana are the shelter of which we take when we do property, like that. So some people may say we surrender to Lakshmi Narayana. Some people may say we surrender to, so the Vadagalais will say we surrender to the Divya Dampatis, together, Lakshmi Narayana. And Tengalais will say we surrender to Sriman Narayana, who is also associated with the goddess Shri, and she has to be there because she is the mediatrix. It's a very, very slight difference in emphasis. It's not at all relevant in practical terms, because all the Sri Vaishnavas accept the great importance of Sri Mahalakshmi as being the Purushakara, or the mediator between the soul and between God and the souls during the process of property, in the process of property. So again, we all agree that Narayana in the first sentence of Dwayam refers to the Lord, and the Lord himself, Sriman Narayana, is the Upaya, or the only means of salvation. The Narayana in the second sentence refers to the Lord as the Upaya, or goal of salvation, right? So in the first sentence, Sriman Narayana Charano Sharanam Papadye, the Lord is the means. He is the Upaya. In the second sentence, Srimate Narayanaya Namaha, he is the Upaya, or the goal. So here's the word Narayana in the first sentence of Dwaya means the means, Upaya. In the second sentence means the Lord is the goal. He is both the means and the goal. That's the idea of the Dwaya mantra, to understand that first of all, he's the means. Second of all, he's the goal. So, in the second sentence, it refers to the Lord as the Upaya, or goal of salvation, as the recipient of service rendered by the soul. In both cases, the word Narayana is modified by the phrase joined with Shri, Srimati and Shriman. So, Shriman Narayana and Srimati Narayanaya, right? So, in both cases, Shriman Narayana means the Lord Narayana with Shri, and Srimate Narayanaya means Lord Narayana with Shri, in both cases, in both sentences. What is her position in each sentence? So now we just explained what is his position in both sentences. His position in the first sentence is Upaya, the means, the only means. His position in the second sentence is Upaya, the goal. So, what is her position in each sentence? Now, Manavala Mahmudi and his predecessor have interpreted Shri's role as mediator or Purushakara in the first sentence. In the first sentence, as I said, Sri Mahalakshmi, in the process of property, The first sentence of Dwaya Mantra is about the process of property. It's about the upaya, the means to liberation. And it mentions Sriman Narayana Charana. So both the Lord and Mahalakshmi are important in property. She is important because she's the mediator in the first sentence. So in the process of property, which is the Lord himself is property, right? He is the upaya. Shri is the mediator. She is the purushakara. So her position his position is the upaya, is the means. Her position in the first sentence is purushakara, the mediator between God and the souls. She does not share the status as an upaya, for that would compromise the Lord's self-sufficiency or lack of need for any other aid when acting as a means of salvation. Okay, so this is the Tengalai view. So the Tengalai Acharyas, the Sri Rangamacharyas, Pilalokacharya Manavala Mamuni, what they're saying here is when we look at the first sentence of Dwaya Mantra, in which the Lord is explained to be, and nobody disputes this, that he is explained, even the Vadagalai Sampradaya Vedanta Deshika, nobody disputes that the Lord, Sriman Narayana himself, is the upaya or the means specifically stated in the first sentence of Dwaya. The question is Mahalakshmi also the upaya? Is she also the means? Is it Sriman Narayana, Sri and Lakshmi, who are both the upaya in the first sentence? The point the Tengalai Acharyas are making is that if we accept also Sri or Mahalakshmi as the upaya, as the means for liberation, that means that would compromise the Lord's self-sufficiency. He is Swatantra. We are Paratantra. Even Mahalakshmi is Paratantra. What do I mean by that? Swatantra means independent. The Lord is completely independent. He's totally independent. He doesn't need anything else. He doesn't need anybody else, anything else. He's completely independent. We, however, are completely dependent on the Lord. We're completely dependent on the Lord. Now, what's the situation with Mahalakshmi? Is she dependent on the Lord or is she completely independent? She's not completely independent. She is also dependent on the Lord. She is the divine consort of the Lord, and therefore she is also totally dependent on the Lord. Now, she is of course, she's much, much greater than any of us. We are also dependent on her. We are also dependent on her. But she is also dependent upon the Lord. So, because the Lord is the only person who is Swatantra, he is the only person who is completely and utterly self-sufficient and independent. Everybody else is dependent upon him, including Mahalakshmi. So, the point of the Tengalai Acharyas here is that she is also dependent on the Lord. So, if she is dependent on the Lord, right, even though she plays an essential part in the property, in the system of property, still, she is not completely Swatantra. And he is Swatantra. He is completely Swatantra. So she does not share in the Lord's status, therefore, as the upaya, as the means. Okay, so this is further discussed by the Vadagalai and Tengalai Acharyas, where they say that Mahalakshmi can create universes. Mahalakshmi can. See, this is one thing the jivas, the individual souls cannot do even in liberation. The soul is very great in liberation when it's uncovered from Maya and uncovered from ignorance. The soul is also very great in liberation. It has unlimited knowledge because it's not covered by any illusion. It has bliss, unlimited bliss, because it's not covered by any illusion like that. But we cannot become the husband of Mahalakshmi. This is what even Dr. Tirunarayan was telling us. Patitva, Shriya Patitva. We cannot become the husband of Mahalakshmi. We can become blissful. We can become knowledgeable, unlimitedly in liberation. But we cannot become the husband of Mahalakshmi. It's not possible. And we cannot create universes. And we cannot ever give liberation ourselves. Right? That's something that the soul, these are things that the individual jiva cannot do like that. Now, the difference on these points between the Vadagalai and Tengalai Sampradaya is that the Sri Rangamacharyas say Mahalakshmi also cannot create universes and cannot give liberation herself. Whereas the Vadagalai Acharyas say, no, she is part of the Godhead. She is part of the Godhead. She is always with the Supreme Lord. She is therefore, just like the Supreme Lord, she's able to create universes, and she's also able to directly give liberation. The question that the Tengalai Acharyas have, why do we never see that she does this? The answer that the Vadagalai Acharyas give is because she defers to her husband, the Supreme Lord, Srimad Narayana. In other words, she could create universes, she could give liberation directly, but she doesn't because she is the wife and she lets her husband do that. She defers to his supreme will to do that. So again, we see that even the Vadagalai Acharyas accept that she is not completely swatantra or independent, that she is dependent upon on Lord Narayana. She's dependent on Lord Narayana, just like all of us, just like everything in creation, both sentient and non-sentient. Everything is dependent upon the Lord. And he is the only one who's completely and absolutely independent and swatantra. So, okay, so this is the point that the Tengalai Acharyas say, that the Lord can give liberation. No one else can give liberation. Mahalakshmi cannot give liberation. If Mahalakshmi can give liberation, or if Mahalakshmi is needed for the Lord to give liberation, even though it's very important that we do approach the Lord through Mahalakshmi, but if there is any lack in the Lord, if there's anything that the Lord isn't self-sufficient from, even Mahalakshmi, that compromises his Ananta Kalyana Gunas, his unlimited auspicious quality, and one of his qualities is completely independent. So in the second sentence, however, so this is the idea in the first sentence, that the difference is not between the Vadagalais and Tengalais in the first sentence of Dwaya Mantra on the word Narayana. There's no difference, again. Because both Vadagalais and Tengalais see the word Narayana in the first sentence of Dwaya Mantra to mean the means or property, right? The means of liberation. The difference is on the word Shriman. Shriman, is Shriman also the Upaya, or is, according to the Vadagalai Sampradaya, or is Shriman not the Upaya, but the Purushakara, the mediator between God and the souls? And therefore, Lakshmi herself cannot give liberation, according to the Tenacharya Sampradaya. According to the Vadagalai Sampradaya, she can give liberation, but she doesn't. She never does, because she always will only do what Sriman Narayana or Lord Narayana tells her to do, because he is her eternal master, just like he's the eternal master of everyone, right? So very, very small difference here, because one side says she can give liberation separately, right? But she never does. And the other side says, therefore, if she never does, we basically have to say she can't. She can't give liberation. If she never gives liberation, then what is the use of saying that she can give liberation? So it's just a matter of the Vadagalai Sampradaya saying she can give liberation. So okay, whether she can give liberation or not, who really cares if she never does it, because she's dependent upon her husband, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Narayana. So it's really a very, 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 very small difference, but it's only a difference of emphasis and not a difference of that makes any difference in reality, because in reality, everybody worships the Supreme Lord and surrenders to him through the agency of the Guru Parampara, and ultimately Mahalakshmi as the representative as the mediator between God and the soul. So that's the difference in the first sentence between the idea about Shriman in the first sentence between the two Bhattacharya and Tengalais. The word Srimate in the second sentence. Now let's see what that says. In the second sentence, however, she shares the Lord's status as Upeya. Upeya means the goal. The goal. She's the goal, because what is the goal of all Sri Vaishnavas? After surrender to the Lord, the goal is to go to Sri Vaikuntham and to serve the Lord eternally. So eternal service to the Lord is what we understand moksha to be, right? So other groups, other sampradayas, other religions may think of liberation or moksha as some other thing. But, Christians may think going to heaven and just sitting around enjoying. No. Liberation or moksha in Sri Vaishnavism is when we leave this material body and we attain the status of a nitya in Sri Vaikuntham, and we therefore have the eternal service of the Lord in Sri Vaikuntham. It's not a passive thing, it's an active thing. Moksha is active. It's the service of the Lord forever in Vaikuntham. So that service to the Lord, that is moksha, that is the goal, and that is the Lord himself is the goal, to serve the Lord. So she shares the status of being the goal. We also are not going to just serve the Lord in Sri Vaikuntha, we're also going to serve the Lord with Mahalakshmi, with Sri Devi, right? Both she and the Lord accept the soul's service. It's not that, we shouldn't think that Tengalais hate Mahalakshmi and don't want to serve Mahalakshmi, or don't want to give any regard to Mahalakshmi, or don't want to praise Mahalakshmi. No, it's not that. It's not that. Service to the Lord also means service to Mahalakshmi, which is what I said, that if a man engages a servant in his house, this was described in Sri Vachanabhushana. If a man engages a servant in his house, it means necessarily the servant is also going to serve the lady of the house. The lady of the house, the wife of the master, is the mistress. And so Sriman Narayana is our master, Mahalakshmi is our mistress. So we serve both of them. That is natural. So in the ultimate end of everything, we're serving both of them. We're not just going to Vaikuntha and serving Sriman Narayana and disregarding Mahalakshmi. We have to serve both of them. Even here, even there, we are serving both of them. So Tengalais do not disregard Lakshmi. It's not that we don't agree to serve Mahalakshmi or praise Mahalakshmi. We do, in the same way as all Vaishnavas do. So that's agreed. That's agreed that Srimate Narayanaya Namaha, the Srimate, meaning Mahalakshmi, right, is accepted also as the goal. Srimate Narayanaya Namaha, accepted by both Bhattacharya and Tengalais, that we have to worship her as well as him. We have to offer our service to him and her. Yeah? Both she and the Lord accept the soul's service. Vedanta Deshika argues that it's indefensible to interpret Srimat differently in the two sentences. Okay? So, Vedanta Deshika is saying, you've got two sentences and they come in context right next to each other. One follows on from the other. And you have a word in both sentences. How do you say that the word Shriman has a different meaning than the word Srimate? So that's a good argument by Vedanta Deshika. Very, very good argument, right? Normally, if we see two words coming in very close proximity in a text, the author must have definitely meant that they mean the same thing. Normally, we would say that. However, However, on the Tengalai side, they say, since we've already seen that the word Narayana in the first sentence means the upaya or the means, and the word Narayana in the second sentence means the upaya or the goal, and the means and the goal are two different things. They're two different interpretations. So since there's two different interpretations of the word Narayana, why would we not think that there can be two different interpretations of the word Sriman or Srimati? So although Vedanta Deshika gives this point, which is a good point, it's a good point. How can we say that they mean two different things? Well, that's fine, but Vedanta Deshika also agreed before that there are two different meanings to the word Narayana in the two sentences. So in a way, how can we accept his argument here for the word Sriman when we didn't accept, he even didn't accept his argument for the word Narayana? Anyhow, this is the argument that he gives. As the Lord's inseparable attribute, right? Inseparable attribute, she cannot be divorced from him, either when he acts as Upeya or when he acts as Upaya. So this is a further point that Vedanta Deshika makes. And this is also a very good point. This is, I am astounded by the great points of Vedanta Deshika, but I'm also astounded by the great points of the Tengalai Acharyas also. What is Vedanta Deshika's further point? So his first point was that why do we give different interpretations to the word Shri, Shriman, and Srimate in the two sentences? And that, then he says, they must mean the same thing. But as I just said, everybody agrees, even Vedanta Deshika, that the word Narayana in the two sentences have two different meanings. So then, why would we think that the word Shri could not have two different meanings? It also can have two different meanings. Now, further, he says, to bolster that idea that the same meaning is there in the word Shri in both sentences, Shriman and Srimate, right? He says, the reason that I say this, the even more strong reason that I say this is because Shri, or Goddess Mahalakshmi, is the inseparable attribute of the Lord. The Lord is a thing, and the attribute is Mahalakshmi. And and according to Sri Vaishnava epistemology, if anybody has studied Sri Vaishnava epistemology, they understood what Dharma Bhuta Jnana is. That if a thing and its attribute are inseparable, according to Sri Vaishnavism, just like we say, I think, therefore I am. Descartes, in the philosopher Descartes in Europe, he said, I think, therefore I am. So consciousness is a quality of the soul, right? Consciousness is a quality of the soul. The soul, in fact, is consciousness, and you cannot separate consciousness from the soul. So in a similar way, what Vedanta Deshika is saying here, is that Mahalakshmi cannot be separated from the Lord. She cannot be separated from the Lord. She's always with the Lord, right? And she is so close to the Lord that she is in fact an attribute of the Lord. She's considered to be an attribute of the Lord. Just like consciousness is an attribute of the soul. If you take consciousness out, there's no soul. The soul is consciousness. Consciousness, thinking, and sentience, right? Sentience is an aspect of the soul, but it's also an intrinsic aspect. It's totally intrinsic. If we take away consciousness from the soul, there is no soul. The soul is consciousness. Even in the three states of waking, sleeping, and deep sleep, there's some form of consciousness. The soul is never inert. The soul is never insentient. Chit never becomes achit. Achit means matter. So the soul can never become unconscious, totally, absolutely unconscious or dead, right? It is always sentient. So in the same way, Mahalakshmi is always with the Lord. The Lord without Mahalakshmi is not the Lord. The Lord is always with Mahalakshmi. This is the point that Vedanta Deshika is saying, that she is the attribute of the Supreme Lord. She is the inseparable attribute of the Supreme Lord. She can never be divorced from him, either when he acts as the upeya, in other words, the goal, right? So when we serve him, we also serve her. right? Even when we see Lord Narayana, deities of Lord Narayana on the chest is the Srivatsa, the mark of Shri. She's also there. So there's no way, even if we go to, if we see Nam Perumal by himself and we bow to Nam Perumal, we're also bowing to Mahalakshmi at the same time because Mahalakshmi is there on his chest. So she is inseparable from him. So there's no way that we can serve the Lord without serving Mahalakshmi. Right? Okay. So as an upaya, he's saying, Vedanta Deshika is saying, as an upaya, as a goal of service, she's inseparable from the Lord. And when he acts as the upaya, he says, when the Lord acts, therefore Mahalakshmi is also part of that act. She's part of that act. So when the Lord is the upaya or the means of liberation, she's also the means of liberation. Right? This is his argument. Her special function is mediating, since she's the very embodiment of the Lord's compassion. She's the embodiment of Narayana's compassion. So Lord Narayana has different qualities. One of those qualities is compassion. He has unlimited auspicious qualities, ananta kalyana gunas. One of those gunas is unlimited compassion. His unlimited compassion is embodied as Mahalakshmi. He's embodied as Mahalakshmi. So her special function is mediating, since she is the very embodiment of the Lord's compassion. It would only be natural to have a mediator in the quarrel between the souls and the Lord, to have a mediator who is compassion personified. It would only be appropriate, right? Because, it makes sense to have someone in the middle between the two, between the sinning souls and the Lord, who's angry with the sinning souls and wants to chastise them and keep them bound up in samsara, right? So that they learn their lesson for sinning and rebelling against him, right? It's only natural to have somebody compassionate, the embodiment of compassion in between as the mediator. Understandable. Nevertheless, as an aspect of the Lord himself, she shares all his qualities. So this is Vedanta Deshika's point, that Mahalakshmi also shares qualities of the Lord. She is a quality of the Lord. She is an aspect of the Lord. And nevertheless, she also shares other aspects of the Lord, is what he's saying. So nevertheless, as an aspect of the Lord himself, she shares all of his qualities of lordliness, supremacy. Upayatva means being the means, and upayatva, which was mentioned before. Upayatva and upayatva means being the goal and being the means. Okay. So, and lordliness and supremacy, etc. But remember what I said before, what she doesn't share with the Lord. What is it that she doesn't share with the Lord? She doesn't share being swatantra, being completely and absolutely independent and self-sufficient. She is dependent, just like all others are dependent upon the Supreme Lord. So the underlying issue here, which is not fully brought out in Manavala Mahamuni's commentary, is whether Shri is an atomic-sized soul, or jiva, right? Thus to be classified in the Chit Tattva, or whether she's an aspect of the Lord himself, thus to be classified as the Ishvara Tattva. Okay, so these very small differences in meaning, shades of meaning, between the meaning of the word Shri and Shriman and Shrimati in Dwaya Mantra, between the Wadagalai and Tengalai schools, eventually turned into an argument or a doctrine saying that the Wadagalai school was saying, okay, we see Shri like this, that she is also God. She is part of Ishvara Tattva. Tattva means principle, and there are three Vedantic principles. There's Ishvara, and Chit, and Achit. So Ishvara means God. Chit means sentient beings apart from God. And Achit means insentient things like matter, this material universe. So we have the world, the souls, and God. Achit, Chit, and Ishvara. So which category? We know which category Lord Narayana belongs to. He belongs to the Ishvara Tattva. He is Vedantically, he is God. we know which category we belong to as Jivatmans, as individual sparks of Brahman, of spiritualness, into very, very small atomic, it said smaller than the 10,000th the size of the tip of a hair, very small, like that, not all pervasive, just very, very small, but of the same essence as God, but very, very small, like sparks of a fire, very small. So that's us, Jivatmans, the Jivatmans. So Paramatman, we understand, is Ishvara Tattva. Jivatman is the rest. The third category is insentient matter, dull matter, with no consciousness whatsoever. So, which category does Mahalakshmi belong to? We know what we belong to. We know what God belongs to. We know what dull matter belongs to. But which category does she fit into? So this is the discussion. So it becomes a discussion like that. So the question is so the answer that the northern school, the Kanchipuram school says, is that she is Ishvara Tattva also. She's also Ishvara Tattva. They accept her as another God, as a part of God. Just like we would see if we look at different avatars of the Lord. We have the fish, and we have Matsya Kurma, the tortoise, we have Varaha, the boar, we have Narasimha, half lion. Similarly, we have in the Vadagalai idea, we also have Mohini. Mohini avatar is a female form of Vishnu. So basically what the Vadagalai acharyas are saying, that there's really no difference between Vishnu and Lakshmi. So when we see Mohini, basically it's the same thing as Lakshmi. That Lakshmi can be understood to be just a feminine form of God, or she is there as she's also God. She's also God. She can also create universes. She can also give liberation directly. Of course, she doesn't, but therefore she's also part of God, and therefore she is in the Ishvara category. What the Tengalais will say is she a separate person? Is she a separate person? Mohini and Narayana are not separate persons. Krishna and Rama are not separate persons. They are separate avatars. They're separate incarnations. They're separate expansions of the same person. The same person, Sriman Narayana, expands as Krishna, Rama, Narasimha, Varaha, Matsya, Kurma, and Mohini. So when Narayana comes as Mohini, he has a Mohini Alankar. He looks like a lady. He's neither a lady nor is he a gentleman, right? He is beyond all those things. He has the qualities of all, right? He is completely above all those definitions of male and female gender, like that. The Supreme Lord is everything. So he can come in a female form as Mohini. He can come in a male form as Rama. He can come as a fish or a tortoise or a boar or a half man, half lion. He can come in any form he likes, like that. The question is again, so we understand the forms of Narayana. They are Ishvara Tattva. They are the principle of God principle. They are the category. They're in the category of God. What is Mahalakshmi's category? Mahalakshmi again is also dependent upon the Lord, right? When she appears, is that an avatar of the Lord? Is that spoken of in scripture? If we look in Pancharatra scripture, and do we see that there are 5 forms of God mentioned? Karnika, Vyuha, Vibhava, Antayam, and Archa. In Pancharatra, does it say that Mahalakshmi is an incarnation of the Lord? Or is she a separate person? She's a separate person, according to Tengalai Acharyas. She's a separate person. She's a separate personality. If she's not a separate personality, then what is the meaning of saying that she stands between the Lord and the souls? In a family, we have a husband and we have a wife who are parents, and there are children. So the souls are all the children. Mahalakshmi is the mother, who is also the wife of the husband, Narayana. So in a family, yes, in one sense, we can say that that there are two persons, the husband and wife, who are parents. They're parents, right? They're both parents, but at the same time, they're individuals. They're separate people. There's a husband and a wife. The wife is dependent on the husband, Sriman Narayana, Mahalakshmi. So she is not exactly the same as the husband. She's not exactly the same as the husband. Each person has a role to play in the family, right? We cannot become God. We cannot become Mahalakshmi. Mahalakshmi, again, is not one of the children. She is the consort of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana. She is the divine consort and wife of Narayana. So she can't also become just an ordinary Jivatman, right? She's not. She is in between. And Sriman Narayana, right? She also doesn't become Narayana. The wife doesn't become the husband either. In the family structure, in that analogy anyway, in that analogy that I'm giving, Mahalakshmi has a specific place. She doesn't take the place of the husband, and she doesn't take the place of the children. What has come down to is that between the Vadagalaya and Tengalaya Acharyas, they say in Vedanta, there are only three categories. She cannot be the insentient category. She is not achit. She is not insentient. She cannot be insentient because she has consciousness. She is a personality. So she is either one or the other. She is either Ishvara Tattva in the category of God, or she is Jiva Tattva, Chit Tattva in the category of the individual souls. She must be one or the other. She can't be something different. In the analogy I gave of the family, she's something different. But in Vedanta, there is no other category. In Vedanta, there is no other category. Maybe that's a problem in Vedanta. I don't know. Okay, but so the point is that what has happened is the Vadagalaya Acharyas have chosen one category, and the Tengalaya Acharyas have chosen the other category. That's all, right? Because they have slight different arguments as to her role. Because, as I said before, the Tengalaya Acharyas say, no, she can't give liberation directly. No, she can't create universes. And the Vadagalaya Acharyas say, yes, she can, but she never does, right? Because of that, they can't see her as being, the Tengalayas can't see her as being another god. And that's another Vedantic argument that the Tengalayas have against the Vadagalaya idea that she's Ishvara Tattva, is that there can't be two gods. In Vedanta, there's only one God, Narayana. There's only one source of everything. Narayana is the source of everything. He's also the source of Mahalakshmi. He's not only the source of this world and the jivas, he's also the source of Mahalakshmi. So if, according to the Shastras, and we read in the Shastras, in the Shruti, in the Vedas, in the Upanishads, that he's the source of everything, then he's also the source of Mahalakshmi. So if he's the source of Mahalakshmi and she's dependent upon him, just as everybody else is dependent on him, then she's in a category that must be dependent upon him. That's the Tengalaya Acharya's argument. She must therefore be in a category, no matter how great she is, and she is supremely great, right? She is not an ordinary soul, for sure. But no matter how great she still is dependent upon the Lord, and therefore she has to go in the dependent category or the Chit Tattva. Whereas the Vadagalaya Acharyas say, no, she's so great that she's actually in the Ishvara Tattva. She's actually in the God category. So it's a very small difference. And let's see some more about it. So this is where it came down to, is that the Vadagalais are offended if the Tengalais say that she's Chit Tattva, because they think that they're criticizing her or diminishing her role. Whereas the Tengalais are all offended by the Vadagalais who say that she can create universes and give liberation herself, and therefore she is another god. She's a second god in Vedanta. There can only be one god. So it just also depends upon the emphasis of the different acharyas. So thus, to be classified as Chit Tattva, and whether she's an aspect of the Lord himself, thus to be classified as Ishvara Tattva. I will just, I've also mentioned here about Pancharatra, the school of Pancharatra, which does not include Mahalakshmi as an expansion of the Supreme Lord, a full expansion of the Supreme Lord, or as an avatar of the Supreme Lord. It's also understood when we do installation of deities of Mahalakshmi, or installation of deities of Ramanuja or some other acharya, right? Some Bhakta Bimba. We do not do there are many aspects to the ritual which are not there, which are there when we do an installation of a deity of Sriman Narayana himself, or any of his full incarnations like Rama, Krishna, Narasimha. There's different type of installation of deities there. Also, we can mention that Mahalakshmi is with the Supreme Lord Narayana always. Yes, that's true, and that is being emphasized by Vedanta Deshika and the Kanchi Acharyas. But in which way, in what way is Mahalakshmi always with the Supreme Lord? In what way? The Tengalai Acharyas say that she is with the Supreme Lord always, expand her guna vyapti by the process of guna vyapti. Guna vyapti means by her, not directly by swarupa, her direct form is there with Sriman Narayana, but her attribute is there. Her attribute is there, guna vyapti. Just like we have when in liberation, the soul has complete knowledge and complete bliss. So because we have complete knowledge of everything, we're knowledgeable about things that if we're in Vaikuntha and we have complete knowledge of everything, then we're knowledgeable also about everything that happens here in this Lila Vibhuti, in this material world. So because of that, we can also, in a sense, be with the Supreme Lord everywhere, in the sense of knowledge, but not in the sense of our actual self, Swarupa. So this is a difference between the Wadagalai and Tenkalai schools. That the Wadagalai school says that Mahalakshmi is all pervasive in the sense that she has Swarupa Vyapti. In her actual being, essential being, she is all pervasive, just like the Supreme Lord. Because as individual souls, we cannot be all pervasive. We're like little sparks, and we're not like the big fire. So the question is Mahalakshmi another big fire, or is she also a spark? Maybe she's a big spark, but is she another complete separate fire from Sriman Narayana? So in that analogy of sparks and fire, we have to ask that question. So whether Mahalakshmi is with Sriman Narayana everywhere by the method of Swarup Vyapti in her essential self, or by Guna Vyapti, by the all pervasive nature of her qualities, namely all knowing, all experiencing, just like the Jivatman in liberation is also all knowing. So okay, so then this is it's a basic question whether she's Ishvara Tattva or she's Chit Tattva. It doesn't change Mahalakshmi. It doesn't change Mahalakshmi. It's just we're arguing about whether she's in one category or in the other category, but her role in property doesn't change. Her role in property doesn't change. So really, it's a very academic discussion between the Wadagalais and Tengalais on this point, and it doesn't really matter too much practically in the practical performance of property. Right, because both sides believe that she is Purushakara and she is a necessary part of the process of property, and she is the mediator between the souls and God. So it doesn't matter that much. The former is a Tengalai view, right? That she's classified as an atomic-sized jiva, jivatman or chit tattva, and the latter. While Vedanta Deshika supports the latter position, Manavala Mahamuni never explicitly refers to Shri's anutva, meaning being a minute or micro, what does it say, atomic-sized soul, right? or jivatva. So we should remember this when we're discussing, if we ever get into a discussion with a Wadagalai or Tengalai about these points, right? About this specific point, we can actually point to the fact that Manavala Mahamuni never actually explicitly says that she's just a little atomic-sized jiva, right? Just like I said, you know, she's even the Tengalais, we have to admit, she's a great personality. She's a great personality, like that, far greater than any other jivatma, like that. In his commentary on Mumuksupadi, this doctrine is brought out fully in Perivachan Pillai's Paranta Rahasya. So there's a book by Perivachan Pillai, who is also a Tengalai Acharya, right? We're studying his commentary on Stotra Ratna just now. In his book called Paranta Rahasya, he explicitly, more fully brings out this doctrine of the 10 Acharya Sampradaya. But when seen in the light of this teaching, the Tengalai rationale, right, for denying Shri's upayatva, right, and affirming her upayatva seems much more consistent. So, seeing the light of this all, right, the Tengalai Acharyas, they say that Shri, we deny that Shri is the upaya, is the means, but we affirm that she is the goal, that the service to her is the goal, right? So this seems consistent if we read Perivachan Pillai's Paranta Rahasya, and if we understand this argument. Okay, so there's a difference. Now, so we're covering the different meanings of the different words in the Dwaya mantra, and we'll come to it. We'll come to it later on in the book when we get to the Dwaya Prakaranam, the part about the Dwaya mantra. But she's just giving a slight explanation of it now. In doing so, Manavala Mahamuni seems, and the Tengalai Acharyas, preserve Shri's middle position as the mediator. So we should never think, if we get into this argument about is she God, is she the jiva, it's never that the Tengalacharya Sampradaya and the Tengalai Acharyas, Manavala Mahamuni, they never really say that she's just a little jiva like everybody else. She's not just a little jiva like everybody else. We want to try to preserve her middle position, right? Just like, the example of the family. There's a husband, there's a wife, they're both parents, right? Vedanta Deshika is saying, look, they're both parents. They're both in that category. What the Tengalai Acharyas are saying, she is dependent on the husband, so are the kids. The children are also dependent on the husband. Everybody's dependent upon the husband. The Supreme Lord, Narayana, everybody's dependent on him. So there's just a difference in emphasis like that. So again, in the family position, we don't want to get into a position where we say, where somebody else is arguing, the Wadagalai Acharyas are arguing, Shri and Lord Narayana are both the parents. Yeah, we agree. There's a difference, though, between the husband and the wife, the mother and the father. There's a difference. If there were no difference between the mother and the father, why would we need the mother in between the father? Because the father wants to punish the sinful souls. The souls want to approach the father, but they don't know how to because they're so sinful, and they fear the wrath of the Supreme Lord because of their sins. So they go to the mother. Through the mother, they approach the father. So the mother is able to get the souls to approach the father, to convince them to approach the father and to surrender to him. And she's also able to convince the husband, the father, Sriman Narayana, not to punish the souls. So she has a pivotal role in saving the souls in the process of property. But she is not the father. Neither is she the child. She's not the children also, right? So we should never think that the Tengalaya Acharyas and the Tengalayas are saying that Mahalakshmi is like the children. She's also like the children. She's not. Only in the sense that she also is dependent upon the Supreme Lord. Only in that sense. So the wife is also dependent on the husband, but not in the same way as the children. The children are completely and utterly dependent upon the parents and upon the Supreme Lord, the Father, right? So the Tengalayas are not saying that she is just like us. They're not saying that. They have great respect for Mahalakshmi, right? And praise, and they offer their worship to her also. What they are saying is that she's also dependent upon the Supreme Lord. That's all. That's all they're saying, basically. They want to preserve her mediation position, her position in between the Lord and the souls. We want to preserve that. She's in the middle. We don't want her to be on his side. If she's on his side, then why we can just go and approach him. If she's also God, then why don't we just approach her? If she can also give liberation, why bother about Narayana? Just approach her like that. He is important because he is the one who gives liberation. He is the upaya. He is the actual means. She is important because she is the mediator. So each part of the family is important. The father's important. The mother's important. The children are important. The children can't go to the father directly. They go through the mother. That's the best way. It's the easiest way. The mother is there to temper the father, his attitude towards the children. So everybody has a role to play, and everybody's in their role. But if we say that the role of the mother is the same as that as the role of the father, no, not exactly. It's not exactly the same. We can't also say that her role is the same as the children. No, it's not. It's not at all the same as the children. So don't think that the Tengalaya Sampradaya, the Tengalaya Acharyas are trying to belittle Mahalakshmi. They're not. They're not at all. They're trying to preserve her mediation, her middle position. They're trying to preserve her middle tradition, her middle position, in the face of the pramanas that come from Vedanta saying that there's only one God. There is only one God, and that is Narayana. Therefore, the Tengalayas say, there's only one God, there's only Narayana, therefore Mahalakshmi is not God. That's all we're saying. She's not God. Which I think everybody can agree. She's not God. He's God, she's not God. Is she intrinsically intertwined with God? Is she always with God in a certain way? Gunavyapti. Yes, we agree. She is like that. But she's not God. She's not self-sufficient. She can't create universes, and she can't directly give liberation on her own without the permission of the Supreme Lord. That's all the Tengalayas are saying. So there's really very little difference between the Vadalayas and Tengalayas. It's just that the Tengalaya Acharyas are trying to preserve Vedanta. We're trying to preserve the meaning of Vedanta, that there's only one God, Sriman Narayana. At the same time, we're trying to preserve her middle position. If we put her on the Lord's position, that's wrong. If we put her on the children's position, if we put her on the father's position, no. If we put her on, she's not exactly. She's in between. And therefore, we propose this middle position of Purushakara. And both Kalayas, both Vadalayas and Tengalayas accept that she's Purushakara. It's just that there's a little bit more emphasis on her godliness by the Vadalayas, and a little bit more emphasis on her subservience to God on the Tengalaya side. That's all. So the Tengalaya Acharyas want to preserve Shri's middle position as a mediator, ranking higher than an ordinary jiva, yet lacking the Lord's autonomy, lordliness, supremacy. She is in a perfect position to act as mediator. Perfect position to act as mediator. So now we've discussed that there's really no distinction in the Vadalayas and Tengalayas understanding of the first mantra, the Tira mantra, the Astakshara. Only its application, how it's given to Sudras and to ladies, right, non-Brahmins. We've discussed the Dvaya mantra and what is the emphasis on the meanings of the different words, specifically Narayana in the first sentence and Narayana in the second sentence. right, as upaya, the means, and upaya, the goal. And we've also discussed the meaning of Shri, Sriman Narayana, and Srimate Narayanaya in the two sentences, right? And it's the difference, and for Narayana, there was no difference between Vadagalais and Tingalais. For the word Shriman and Srimate, there was a slight difference in understanding between Vadagalais and Tingalais in the two sentences. So now we've discussed those two mantras and the slight differences that are there between Vadagalais and Tingalais. It is now that we come to a discussion of the difference in the Charma Sloka, in the interpretation of Charma Sloka. So it is in the interpretation of Charma Sloka, the last mantra to be accepted by Sri Vaishnava Rahasya Traya. And we have to remember that there are other Charma Slokas like Rama Charma Sloka and Vraha Charma Sloka, which also can be discussed, but which are not normally discussed in these Rahasya Granthas. In fact, Vedanta Deshika has written another book, Abhaya Pradhana Saram, in which he discusses specifically the Ramacharma Sloka. So we won't talk about the Ramacharma Sloka. We won't talk about the Varahacharma Sloka here. We're only going to talk here about three mantras. And this particular one, the Krishna Charma Sloka, Bhagavad Gita 1866, is normally the last mantra given in Samashrayanam or Pancha Samskara to Sri Vaishnavas. So, it's the interpretation of the Charma Sloka, the last mantra to be accepted of the Sri Vaishnava Rahasya Traya, that has the most points of controversy, right? So that the most points of controversy arise between Vedanta Deshika and the Tengalai tradition, as defended by Manavala Mamuni. So remember, we have Vedanta Deshika on one side, and he is approximately the same time as Pillai Lokacharya, right? He's a junior contemporary Pillai Lokacharya. And then we have also people like Perivachan Pillai, and then we have Pillai Lokacharya's younger brother, Alagiya Manavala Perumal Nayana, and we also have Manavala Mamuni coming later on, like that on the Tengalai side. Okay, so these are the most important acharyas. There are other acharyas also on different sides, and some of them, of course, who don't go into so much detail on these small points of disagreement, and we can look at their works and we can see where they stand on these different issues. So anyway, the most important of the issues is the issue of whether the gerund form of the verb. Now, what do I mean by a gerund form of the word? Okay, a gerund is a noun. When you take a verb and you turn it into a noun, it's a gerund, right? So if I say I swim, or I walk, that means that's present, indicative, continuous case of I walk. If I say walking, I like walking. Walking is the activity that I do when I say I walk. But walking is a thing in itself. Walking, swimming, boating, flying, whatever it is. These are coming from the verbs walks, I walk, I swim, I boat, whatever it is. So that is a gerund, right? So the gerund form here in the statement, in the first part of the statement of the Charma Sloka is Sarvadharman Parityaja. Parityaja is the gerund. Whether the gerund form, right, meaning having relinquished. Tyaj means to abandon or to get rid of or to give up, right? Tyaj, tyajati. Parityaj, the suffix pari means to relinquish. Parityaja, with that ending, means having relinquished, having given up, having abandoned. So having relinquished or having given up or having abandoned all dharmas. Sarva dharman means all dharmas, right? Now, what exactly dharma means, that's another thing. But anyway, having given up, having relinquished, or having abandoned all dharmas, whether that is properly interpreted as a vidi, as an order, right? Or as an anuvad, as an explanation, right? So, does sarvadharman, does parityaja means you must give up all dharmas? Or does it mean after you got frustrated with all these other dharmas like karma yoga, jnana yoga, and bhakti yoga, and they didn't work for you, or after you finished doing them, then resort to property? Is that what it means? So that is Krishna ordering one to give up bhakti yoga and its ancillaries, meaning karma yoga and jnana yoga, right, in favor of surrender to him? So does Krishna spend the whole 18 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita telling Arjuna that he should do karma yoga, jnana yoga, and he should do bhakti yoga, he should do all these things, right up to the very verse before 1866, Manmana bhava madbhakto, majjiji mamanaskuru, mami vash, surrender unto me, bow down before me, always think of me. Does Krishna spend all this time, basically almost 700 verses telling Arjuna all these to do these karma yoga, jnana yoga, and bhakti yoga, only to, in the next verse, in 1866, to tell him, now give up everything. All that I told you before, just forget about that. Give up that. Right? Is that what he's saying? Or is he saying something else? So that is Krishna. Is Krishna ordering one to give up bhakti yoga and its ancillaries, which is karma yoga and jnana yoga, in favor of surrender unto him? Right? That would be the meaning if one interprets the gerund as a command or a vidi. Right? As in the phrase, having bathed, one should eat. So in the phrase, having bathed, one should eat, right? It means that you should first bathe, right? When bathing is totally finished, then you should eat. Not that you should bathe and then eat again. Can start eating while you're bathing. Continue to eat while you're bathing. That wouldn't be the meaning, right? If you say having bathed, you should eat, it means you go take a bath, put on some fresh clothes, and then you go and sit down for your meal. It doesn't mean that you bathe and you continue to bathe while you're eating. That's not what it means. Having bathed, one should eat means first bathe, that's an order, and then eat. Right. So does Krishna say first abandon all dharmas, sarva dharma prityaja, give up karma yoga, jnana yoga, bhakti yoga, then surrender unto me? Or does he mean having abandoned all varieties of religion, just surrender unto me? That would be the meaning if one interprets the gerund to be a command or vidi. Or is Krishna merely stating a condition which has already come about? He's looking at Arjuna and he's saying, Arjuna, I just explained to you all these other things. I explained to you karma yoga, I explained to you jnana yoga, I explained to you bhakti yoga, right? You have obviously given up. You still look like you're not convinced. You think now, because of your massive sins from many millions of births, you still think that you can't do these things. So therefore, give up that idea. Give up the idea of doing these things, because you're finished with those ideas, and just surrender to me. Is that what he's saying? So, or is Krishna merely stating a condition that's already come about? Arjuna has already given up the idea of doing karma yoga, jnana yoga, and bhakti yoga. He's already given. Arjuna didn't surrender to Krishna and then go off and do jnana yoga and karma yoga and bhakti yoga. He didn't do that. He gave up everything and surrendered to Krishna, and Krishna just said fight, and he went and fought. So, or is Krishna merely stating a condition that has already come about? That is he referring to the fact that Arjuna has already given up on these other dharmas for some reason? So Krishna's looking at Arjuna. Is Krishna saying, abandon? Okay, It seems like that I told you all these 700, almost 700 verses already. You're not satisfied. It seems like you're not satisfied. You've already in your mind given up the idea of doing karma yoga, jnana yoga, and bhakti yoga, even though I just spent almost 700 verses telling you about them. It seems like you're not satisfied, right? Is that right? If that's right, then just surrender unto me, right? So then this would be the meaning if one interprets parityaja as an anuvada, as in the phrase, having eaten something forbidden, do the month-long fast. Having eaten something forbidden, do the month-long fast. So nobody is telling you to go out and eat something forbidden. That's not a rule. In the first example, having bathed, one should eat. Means first bathe, go and bathe, go take a bath, and then you can eat. It's a command. Go take a bath, and then you can eat. In the second thing, having eaten something forbidden, you should fast. You should do it's a month-long fast. It's a thing where you eat a little bit only. Every day you eat a little bit less, a little bit less, a little bit, then a little bit more until you finish this type of fasting. It's called Chandrayana fasting, and it happens, it's a penance that people do if they've eaten something that they didn't mean to eat something. They didn't mean to eat something forbidden. There's so many forbidden foods which are tamasic and rajasic or whatever it is, or that wasn't offered to God, or, So somebody by mistake has eaten this food, which is not considered sattvic or isn't prasadam, and they feel badly, and so they think that they've sinned, and so they perform some penance, some prayaschitta to atone for that sin. So it's not, but it's not, we're not saying to people to go out and sin and then do the penance. The order in the scriptures is not go sin and then do this and then do the atonement. So just like here, it says, having eaten something forbidden, having eaten something forbidden, do a month-long fast. So nobody is telling you go out and eat something forbidden. That's not an order. That's just a statement of fact. That's what happened. Somehow or other, you ate something which was forbidden. Therefore, you should do the month-long fast. So you see the difference between having bathed, one should eat, and having eaten something forbidden, do the month-long fast. Of course, in both cases, the second phrase, one should eat and do the month-long fast. The second sentence is the second part of the sentence is a command. So property is actually in the Charma Sloka. That is something that Lord Krishna wants us to do. He wants us to surrender in both cases. The question is, what is the first part? What is sarvadharma parityajya mean? What is abandon over, having abandoned over all varieties of religion, having abandoned all dharmas, having relinquished all dharmas, having given up all dharmas? What does that mean? Is that an order, or is that simply a statement of fact? Pillai Lokacharya and Manavala Mahamuni make it clear that they affirm the Vidi position. So the Tengalaya Acharyas, they say it's an order. When Krishna says abandon all varieties of religion, he means give up doing those things. Give up karma yoga, give up jnana yoga, give up bhakti yoga. Of course, he doesn't mean that you have to give up all work, all knowledge, or all devotional acts. You have to give up. What you have to give up is your idea that doing those things is a part of your sadhana to get moksha. It's not the sadhana for you to get moksha. Pillai Lokacharya and Manavala Mahamuni make it clear that they affirm the vidi, or the order position, over the anuvad, or just statement of fact interpretation of the first part of the Charma Sloka, Sarva Dharmam Parityaja. Abandon all varieties of religion, relinquish all dharmas, give up all dharmas. they do not shrink from drawing the unavoidable implication that bhakti yoga and all other upayas, all other means like karma yoga, jnana yoga for moksha, as taught in the scriptures and in the earlier portions of the Gita, are not really effective upayas at all. So what the Tengalaya Acharyas are saying is that there is no effective upaya. There is no effective upaya than the Lord himself. Without the Lord himself, you can do karma yoga, you can do jnana yoga, you can do bhakti yoga, you can do it all, but without the Lord himself as the ultimate upaya, you won't reach the goal. You cannot reach the goal without the Lord himself. The Lord himself is the only upaya. And this karma yoga, jnana yoga, and bhakti yoga are not really upayas. When the Lord in the scriptures says to you, do karma yoga, do jnana yoga, do bhakti yoga, he's encouraging you to do devotional acts, to study the scriptures, to perform work and offer the fruits of those activities to him. But these are not actually the ways by which one achieves moksha. Now, of course, in the scriptures it said that these are the ways to attain moksha. These are ways to attain moksha. But we know that in Sri Vaishnavism, even the Wadagalais and Tengalais will say that one has to be qualified to perform these things. And normally they say that the different activities of bhakti yoga and of karma yoga and jnana yoga require one to be a male Brahmin to do those things. Whereas property is open to everybody. So both Wadagalai and Tengalai schools agree that property is the main upaya, is the way to reach the Lord. And ultimately, that property means the Lord himself is the way to reach the Lord, right? The difference is that the Tengalaya Acharyas are more firm on this, and they're saying even if you are qualified to perform bhakti yoga, karma yoga, or jnana yoga, even if you're a male Brahmin, if you're born in a pure male Brahmin family, still you should only surrender to the Supreme Lord, because surrender is the only way. Property is the only way. So what we're seeing here is a slight difference in emphasis. The Tengalais are saying surrender is really the only way. It's really the only way. These other ways are taught by the Lord, but without the Lord himself, they're not really ways, right? So what the Wadagalais are saying is, no, these are actually taught by the Lord in Scripture, and therefore, if you're qualified for them, if you're a male Brahmin, then you should do those things, and that's the way for you. If you're qualified, you should do those things. You should do bhakti yoga if you're qualified, and you shouldn't do property. You should do bhakti yoga, like that, because that is a way. Bhakti yoga is a way. Karma yoga is a way. Jnana yoga, these are all ways, right? And you should do those if you're qualified for them. You should do them like that. But in actual reality, in actual fact, even the Wadagalai Acharyas never teach their disciples to do bhakti yoga as a means to moksha. All Sri Vaishnavas are united, totally united in telling everybody in the Sri Vaishnava community that property is the only way. So here it is in this discussion of the Charma Sloka that the Tengalais are emphasizing that property is the only way. The Wadagalais are saying, no, there are other ways taught in the scriptures. Theoretically, you can do those other ways. So sort of like that discussion about Mahalakshmi giving moksha or creating universes. Although the Wadagalai Acharyas do say that the scriptures do say that bhakti yoga, karma yoga, jnana yoga are ways to moksha, they never advise their disciples to do that. They always advise only property. And Ramanuja himself did property. He wrote Sharanagati Gajam, which proves that. Yamunacharya speaks of property in his Gitartha Sangraha, which we've seen. So this is not a new idea by Vedanta Deshika and the Tengalaya Acharyas. So Vedanta Deshika and the Tengalaya Acharyas, they're all united in saying property is the way. Property is the way to do. It's a separate upaya. It's a separate method than bhakti yoga, karma yoga, and jnana yoga. And it is really the only thing that everybody should do. Everybody is united on that fact, from Yamunacharya through Ramanuja all the way up to the more modern acharyas. So they do not shrink from drawing the unavoidable implication that bhakti yoga and the other upayas for moksha, as taught in the scriptures and in earlier portions of the Gita, are not really effective upayas at all. In fact, since they demand that the soul make efforts to save himself, once again we get back to the efforts. The soul has to make efforts to save himself, according to the monkey, the baby monkey and the mother monkey idea of cooperative grace. The baby monkey has to make efforts, cooperative grace. Whereas in the Tenacharya system, the mother cat comes and simply picks up the helpless kitten. So if you think that you're totally helpless or hopeless, which is called karpanya in Sanskrit, one of the 6 parts of Sharanagati, right? If you really think like that, you know that there's nothing that you can do, there's nothing which you can avoid, which will help you or which in any way to achieve moksha. It is only by the grace of the Lord, completely. So here it is. In fact, since they demand that the soul make these other upayas, bhakti yoga, kama yoga, jnana, demand that the soul make efforts to save himself. And remember, I've given this example before of a person who's drowning. When you're drowning, the lifeguard, if he thinks that you can save him yourself, he will throw you a life ring. He'll throw you a flotation device, and you try to hang on to that flotation device. But a person who is utterly helpless, who's panicking, will not even be able to use a flotation device. Lord Krishna has given us the flotation device of karma yoga, jnana yoga, and bhakti yoga. But we are unable to properly perform them. We are unable to properly perform them. Just like a drowning man is unable to take the flotation device because he is totally helpless and panicked. He cannot even grab hold of the life ring and save himself. Then when the person saving a person from drowning sees that, the person cannot even keep himself above the water because he's so panicked. Then the lifeguard must jump in himself and approach the person and save the person. But the person has to stop struggling. The person who is drowning, we're all drowning in this material world of samsara. And if we're not totally hopeless and helpless and panicked, then yes, we can do bhakti yoga, karma yoga, and jnana yoga. We can grab hold of some flotation device to try to help us, to try to help the person who's coming to save us, to save us. But if we're totally panicked and totally incapable, we're not able to do those things. That is karpanya, right? Helpless and hopeless. At that point, we can only be directly saved by the Lord himself. But we have to stop struggling. This karma yoga, jnana yoga, and bhakti yoga are simply struggling in this material world, trying by our own efforts to save ourselves from drowning. You can't do it. If you're drowning, you don't know how to swim, and you're panicked, you will not save yourself from drowning. Someone else must save you. The only way that the Lord will come and save you is if you stop struggling. You have to give up, be completely passive, like the kitten, and the mother cat comes along and picks up the kitten. No struggle, the kitten is saved. Whereas with the monkey, the baby monkey has to constantly make efforts to save himself. He has to grab hold of the mother. If he lets go at any point and falls off, if he doesn't remember the Lord at the time of death and falls off, right? And he has to take another birth. So this is the point. So these are not real. The Tengalaya Acharyas are basically saying karma yoga, jnana yoga, and bhakti yoga. Yes, they're stated in the scriptures as ways to liberation, as ways to moksha, but actually they're ineffective. They're ineffective without the grace of the Lord. without that person who is going to save you from drowning, without the lifeguard, you're going to drown. No matter how many life preservers or how many flotation devices are sent to you to help you, like Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga, you're going to drown because you're panicked, because you have absolutely no qualification to do these things. Even if you're a male Brahmin, even if you're born in the highest caste, right? The Tengalai Acharyas are saying, even if you're born in that caste, right? Those qualifications are not going to save you, even performing Bhakti Yoga. So these upayas are considered ineffective. So they take that Sarvadharma Prityaja to be an order. Lord Krishna says to you, no, stop it. Stop struggling. Stop struggling. Just surrender. Just go limp, and the lifeguard will save you. So in fact, since they demand that the soul make efforts to save himself, these upayas are contrary to the soul's essential dependence and subservience, and they are thus sins. The Tengalais go even further, and they say, the real nature of the soul is to be completely and absolutely subservient and dependent on the Lord. That's the real nature of the soul. If you really, really understand that, then you can only simply go limp. You can only simply allow the Supreme Lord to save you. You have to completely surrender to his causeless mercy, right? You cannot do anything on your own volition to try and save yourself. You're a total slave. And the slave doesn't have the ability. The slave doesn't have the right. The slave doesn't have the right to do anything without the order of the master. Of course, the other argument will be, the Vadagalai Acharyas and the Kanchi Acharyas will say that the Lord is giving you orders in the scripture. He's giving you orders to do devotional acts, to study the scriptures, and to work and to offer the fruits to him. He's giving you those orders to do Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. So the Tengalai say, yes, he's giving you those orders so you can do those orders, but not as a pretext to saving yourself. So Tengalais don't just sit around and do nothing. They do karma, they do jnana, they do bhakti. They do all those devotional acts and study of the scriptures, and they do work and offer the fruits to the Lord. They do all those things. They just don't see them as part of the process of being saved by the Lord. We see them as Bhagavad Adhyaya, Bhagavad Kainkari Rupam. In the scriptures, the Lord has given Bhagavad Adhyaya. He's given us the order to do those things. So we do them because they're in the scriptures, they're the order of the Lord. And Bhagavad Kainkari Rupam, we do them simply as a service to him, without any thought of anything in return. We selflessly will do those things and offer those things to the Lord. But here in the Charma Sloka, the Lord orders us. He orders us to give up doing those things on our own behalf. Sarvadharma Prityaja Mamikam, it doesn't mean give up Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. Doesn't mean giving up Karma, Jnana, and Bhakti. It means do those things as a service to the Lord, as a selfless service to the Lord, without thinking that we're going to get anything in return. And this is also the Vadagalai Acharyas, the Kanchi Acharyas also agree on this. They agree on this. They do their Sattvika Tyaga. Before they do anything, they say, I'm not doing this. Srimad Narayana is doing this. I'm not getting any benefit from this. I don't want any benefit. I'm giving up the Palatyaga. I'm giving up the fruits, the result. I'm giving up the result of doing this. I'm doing this because it's in the scriptures. And it pleases the Lord for me to follow the rules of the scriptures. That's all. I'm not doing it to gain liberation. And even I'm not doing it myself. He's doing it through me. Right? So I give up the doership, and I give up the proprietorship of the fruits. I give up it all. I give it all up. All of it should go to Sriman Narayana. All the fruits should go to Sriman Narayana. And he is the one who does it also. So the Tengalai Acharyas go a little bit further. They say that if you think that these are part of your system of attaining liberation, if you think that this is a part of, this is cooperative grace, that you're going to do, by doing the bhakti yoga, that's cooperative, that's cooperating with God, and your efforts are going to achieve something like this, that is against your essential nature as a soul who is completely subservient and dependent on the Lord, and therefore anything against your eternal nature, your essential nature as completely subservient and dependent on the Lord, even a little bit is a sin. Even a little, even a small amount of ego, thinking that I can turn over in the bed and let them take the gold from the other side, right? This is one example. So even that is considered cooperation like that is considered by Tengalacharyas to be sin. So let's continue on. They were enjoined in the Veda only for those who are drunk with the self. Drunk with the self meaning having false ego. Autonomy as a way to wear away their pride. So the Tengalacharyas are saying, okay, so why is it that Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, and Jnana Yoga are given as methods to get to liberation? They're given for people who still think that they have a role to play in their own salvation by performing these paths of self-effort. Only for the person who's drowning, who thinks that he can save himself in some way, in some little way, by hanging on to the life preserver, the flotation device. Not for the person who realizes that he can't swim, he's totally panicked. These are struggles. You have to give up struggling, right? Otherwise, you cannot be approached by the person who's going to save you, the lifeguard, unless you give up the struggling, unless you give up trying to save yourself. So this autonomy, this thinking, this false ego of thinking that I can in some way affect my own liberation, that is what is the Tengalacharyas say is against the nature of the soul, against the essential nature of the soul. Of course, only people who realize that. You have to realize that's the essential nature of the soul. If you do, and when you do, then you understand this. So she says we can look in the sutras or churnas, 188, 198 to 202, 267 to 269. So we'll see later on where this is explained. So now that we understand a little bit about the Tenacharya Sampradaya and the Tenacharyas' ideas of the first Sarvadhamma Pritija phrase in Charmasloka, we should look and see what Vedanta Deshika says. What does he say, right? Because he also is going to give us some really good understanding of this from a slightly different point of view. Vedanta Deshika objects to the Anuvad, to the Anuvad interpretation, largely because, so you can see, the Tengalacharyas object to the Anuvad. The Anuvad means just a matter of fact. Sarvadhamma Pritijara is just a matter of fact. It's not a command. We see above the Tengalacharyas say, yes, it's a command, right? Vedanta Deshika also objects to the Anuvad, or just a matter of fact understanding of Sarvadhamma Pritijara. Statement of effect, interpretation, largely because of the unfavorable light it casts on authority of scriptural injunctions. He and the Wadagalai school affirm that there are two equally valid upayas to moksha, taught by the Lord and expounded by Ramanuja and the early acharyas. Bhakti yoga with all its ancillaries, meaning karma yoga and jnana yoga, right? And the simpler, easier and quicker property or surrender. So what Vedanta Deshika is saying, the Tengalacharyas are saying there's only one way, property. These other ways are not really ways, and they're only meant for people who have a little bit of false ego. And ultimately we consider them to be sinful because they involve a mentality in the individual which isn't completely subservient and dependent on the Lord. But the Vadagalacharya is saying, or Vedanta Deshika is saying, that there's two things, there's two ways to moksha. One way is property, again, agreeing with the Tingalayacharyas, right? Which is simpler and easier and quicker. And the other way is bhakti yoga, with the ancillaries, the helpful other karma yoga and jnana yoga helping bhakti. Karma yoga and jnana yoga is considered to be like two wings of the bird of bhakti. So helping bhakti. So ancillaries to help bhakti. So bhakti yoga and property. These are two methods according to Vedanta Deshika. These two upayas are enjoined on two different types of people, two different groups of people. Those who are qualified for bhakti yoga, right, are disqualified from property and vice versa. So what Vedanta Deshika is saying, that if you're qualified to do bhakti yoga, you should do it. And if you're qualified for property, you should do that. If you're qualified for property, it means the only people who are qualified for property are those people who are disqualified from bhakti yoga. Who is that? So that means Sudras and ladies and foreigners and whatever. Those people, according to Vedanta Deshika, are not qualified for bhakti yoga because bhakti yoga involves performance of so many rituals and things which involve Vedic sacrifice and whatever it is. So there's many things that you have to become qualified to, in order to perform bhakti yoga in the way bhakti yoga is defined by Vedanta Deshika. Whereas everybody can take to property because there's no qualification for property, but there are qualifications for bhakti yoga. So if you're qualified for bhakti yoga, then you should do bhakti yoga. If you're not qualified, you should do property. And let's see what he says. He says, bhakti yoga can be performed only by a twice-born male who has the patience, wherewithal, and energy to undergo its rigors for the rest of his life and possibly for another lifetime or lifetimes, right? So this is where we get to the point where Vadagalais and Tengalais both say that everybody should do property. Why? Because even though Vedanta Deshika is saying that a male Brahmin is qualified by his very birth and by his nature to perform bhakti yoga and therefore should not perform property. Here, the other part of the qualification is that he should have the patience, he should have the wherewithal, he should have the energy, right, to undergo the rigors of performing all bhakti yoga perfectly. And if he doesn't do it perfectly in this lifetime, according to the Gita, in his next lifetime, he has to come back and finish doing it properly and perfectly. And that may take many lifetimes. But the person should not only be born in a Brahmin family, male Brahmin family, but he also has to have all these other qualifications too. So the real problem is, so there's so many male Brahmins in Vadagalai Sampradaya, but they also don't do bhakti yoga. Why don't they do bhakti yoga? They don't do bhakti yoga because they understand that property is an easier way, and they understand they don't have the patience, the wherewithal, and the energy to pursue this for this lifetime and more than one lifetime. Later on, we're going to be talking about, we can talk about these different ways, dripta property and artha property. So there's a type of property where somebody feels that I should go to the Supreme Lord, I should go to moksha immediately because I can't stand being in this material world any second longer. And there's another type of property where we wait until the end of this lifetime and then go to moksha, to the Supreme Lord's service. So these are different types of property. But anyway, not to confuse that, to get back to the point here, we're talking about between property and bhakti yoga. Is bhakti yoga a bona fide method for attaining liberation? Because most scriptures, all the scriptures say so, right? So why would we therefore say it's not, like the Tengalais say it's not, right? It's really not, right? It's just a trick for those persons who still have a little bit of ego, right? But Vedanta Deshika says, yes, it is. It is an actual way to go to liberation, but that person has to have the wherewithal, the energy, and the patience. Just like the monkey, the little monkey on the back of the mother, that is a way. The monkey can hang on to the mother's back, and the mother goes from tree to tree. And if he hangs on, if he's got the strength to hang on, he can save himself. He can cooperate with God, and God, the mother monkey is the Supreme Lord, and goes from tree to tree, takes him to different places. And the baby, if he has the strength, he can hang on. So if you have that strength, so you not only have to be born a male Brahmin, but you have to have that strength and that determination to do it, to do bhakti yoga. Yes, if you have that, then you can do it. But what in actual fact, once again, we see that the Wadagalai Sampradaya, they're making a point because they don't want to disrespect the scriptures that say bhakti yoga is a way to liberation. So they're making the point, but in actual fact, realistically and practically, that's a theoretical point. Yes, theoretically, bhakti yoga is a way to liberation, but practically, nobody has the patience. Nobody has the strength like the little monkey to hang on. So when people realize that they don't have the strength, they don't have the patience, they don't have the wherewithal, then they give up and they just do bhakti. So what in actual fact happens is that it's all theoretical. Even the Wadagalais say that bhakti yoga is a means, they don't adopt it. They don't say that Ramanuja did it. They don't say that any Acharya did it. Even the great Acharya Ramanuja, they don't say that Ramanuja attained liberation by bhakti. They don't say that any Acharya in the Sri Sampradaya has performed bhakti yoga and attained moksha through bhakti yoga. They never say that. No Sri Vaishnava says that any Acharya has attained moksha through bhakti yoga. They all say that every Acharya has performed property. And by property alone, that Acharya has achieved moksha. They always say that, right? So it's theoretical. So it's a theoretical position by the Wadagalais, just in order that we don't disrespect the scriptures. We shouldn't disrespect the scriptures. That's true. So it's not, and also, what does Lord Krishna say in Bhagavad Gita? Lord Krishna, in the end of Bhagavad Gita, he says, this knowledge, after he explains about property, Lord Krishna then says, this knowledge should never be, shouldn't be given to people who don't understand it, who cannot understand it, who are not austere, who are not devoted, like that. So those persons who cannot understand this knowledge cannot be given this knowledge. Right? So there are many people out there that they have false ego and they think, yes, I am going to do something, and that thing that I do, that karma yoga, jnana yoga, and bhakti yoga, that is going to, in cooperation with God's grace, I'm going to get liberation. They don't realize that they are like the drowning man and they have no way of getting out of their predicament except to stop struggling. And only when they realize that and they stop struggling, then the Lord, like the mother cat, will come and pick them up. So there are people who think, yes, I can be like the monkey, the baby monkey. I can hang on. I have some strength. I can do it. I can do so many things, and those things are going to help me to attain liberation. No, the Tengalaya Acharyas say no. Those things will not help you at all. At all. Okay, thank you. Thank you for your comment. Okay, so we're getting along here. So maybe we can just finish up this paragraph and see what happens. Did anybody else have any other comments?
I just wanted to ask.
Yeah, go ahead.
Where does this definition or this idea that bhakti yoga is only to be practiced by a twice-born male come from? It seems to be more mainly a Sri Vaishnava idea, because the other schools of bhakti don't follow that idea at all. So I was just thinking about that.
Yeah, I agree with you. Where is it said? So what we have to do is, because Vedanta Deshika is showing this, that's why we should read Vedanta Deshika's books, because Vedanta Deshika, just like we saw before, Vedanta Deshika, when we're talking about Asakshara Tiramantra, Vedanta Deshika has quoted from Naradiya Kalpam, and he's also quoted from the Prabandhas and things. And there are going to be, he is going to show us things in the scriptures that say this. So he's going to emphasize those quotes. So we have to look at those. So that's why we should definitely read Rahasya Trayasam of Vedanta Deshika. I'm not saying that we should only read books by Tengalaya Acharyas and not read the Vadagalaya Acharyas at all, because they all have very, very, very deep points that can help us to understand the nuances here. This is what we're trying to do. It's really compared to other Vaishnava Sampradayas, these are all very, very intricate points, right? These are not at all. Everybody else takes it for granted that everybody can do bhakti. So I agree with you. Why wouldn't you be able to do bhakti? We see so many examples in the scripture of people who were not male Brahmins who were doing bhakti, right? Or so we think. So we should see how Vedanta Deshika exactly defines bhakti yoga, and what are his proofs from scripture of him saying that only twice born males can do it, right? We should see that, right?
And it also seems that in the Bhakti Shastras, what is identified to be like persons practicing Bhakti Yoga, like for instance the gopis, etc. It seems more that this is actually really prapatti, if you really look at it more carefully, because from the definition of that, again, Bhakti Yoga, twice born male, etc., etc. But then, like the gopis, for instance, as just one example out of many countless examples, they had no qualification and they just simply only knew Krishna and nothing else. And they just totally gave themselves. So it's more like that's more property, even though everyone identifies that to be bhakti.
That's property. Well, you identify it as bhakti. It is bhakti. It is bhakti, but it's not bhakti yoga, because the gopis completely surrendered to Krishna. They didn't want anything in return, right? Property means just So if you have somebody who goes to Krishna and he wants something in return, that's trading, So the thing is, so we have to. It's not that we look at the lives of Sri Vaishnava Acharyas. They're all doing acts of devotion. They're all doing devotional service. They're all doing acts of bhakti. But it's not bhakti yoga. It's not meant. Those acts are not meant to save them from liberation. So it doesn't mean that. Look, the baby kitten is there. The baby kitten can do all sorts of things if he wants, but the actual act of saving the kitten is the mother's only, right? The monkey can also do other things, the baby monkey, but the actual thing that saves it is hanging on to the mother. So what he's saying is, Vedanta Deshika is saying, is only male Brahmins have that ability to hang on, like the baby monkey.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Everybody else doesn't have that ability. So if you don't have that ability, just lay there and God will save you. He'll pick you up. So similarly, there might be a person drowning who can swim. Somebody who can swim, somebody's very qualified. Maybe I'm a lifeguard. I was a scuba instructor. I can swim. I can save other people from drowning. Maybe I find myself in a position where I'm drowning. Well, everybody will expect me to save myself. But there are situations where even the most qualified person, he might be a dive instructor or a rescue diver instructor or whatever. I had those qualifications. But I can tell you, there are situations where you think you're going to die too. You're going to drown too, even though you're so qualified. So the question is only, if we look deeply in the scriptures, what exactly does bhakti yoga mean? Not what is bhakti. Anybody can do bhakti. Anybody can do devotional acts. But who can do actually the yoga of bhakti that will take you to liberation? That, he says, you have to be a male Brahmin. So we definitely have to look at Rahasya Trayasara. We have to find out what the definitions are, the exact definitions. And it's not clear, because I think you can see that some people, even people who are born in the tradition, are not aware of this. And the reason why people are not aware of this, that bhakti yoga can be performed by male, according to Wadagalai acharyas, can only be performed by male Brahmins, right? With the patience and the strength and the wherewithal to do it, right? Is because there's no emphasis on doing bhakti yoga. The emphasis is, even by the Wadagalais, is on doing property. Everybody's emphasizing doing property. So why would they spend a lot of time talking about bhakti yoga and who can be qualified and who cannot be qualified? They don't spend a lot of time on that because nobody cares about that. Because everybody is telling everybody else, do property. Yeah? So
yeah, because when I even asked...
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, that's like when I even asked Dr. Awar about it, he also said that he does not agree with this twice-born male thing either, for Bhakti Yoga even. I don't know if you remember that.
I'm not, I'm not surprised that he doesn't agree with it, because he's Tengalai, So, okay. But also, again, it's probably not the focus of his study to really understand bhakti yoga as a means to liberation, because that's not what is being practiced by anybody in the Sri Sampradaya. Nobody is practicing karma yoga. Nobody is practicing jnana yoga. Nobody is practicing bhakti yoga as a means to liberation in the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya. Everybody is practicing property, and therefore we can talk about those other things, but it's just academic, because nobody's doing that. Nobody's trying to do that. Nobody even thinks that's what's going on, so they don't care. So bhakti yoga can be performed only by a twice-born male who has the patience, wherewithal, and energy to undergo its rigors for the rest of his life and possibly another life. One lacking any one of these qualifications is automatically qualified for property. So all you have to say is I'm impatient, or all you have to say is I don't have the energy, or I don't feel like it. I don't feel that I can do that. If I say to you, okay, here's a deal. You want to be liberated? There's two ways. There's the easy way and the hard way. So you tell the person the hard way. After you tell the person the hard way, then the person says, well, I can't do that. Well, as soon as he says, I can't do that, I don't want to do that, or I've heard the easy way, why would I do the hard way? Right? As soon as he says that, he's not qualified for the hard way. He immediately becomes only qualified for the easy way. Right? It's only when you don't think that the easy way is the easy way, is the quicker way, or if you don't have faith in property as a separate upaya, as a separate method of moksha, when you don't have that faith, then if you don't have that faith, then that's the point. When you don't have that faith in property, then of course you have to do bhakti yoga. So let's just finish up here a little bit. We did get started late, so we could go a little bit longer if everybody wants. One lacking any one of these qualifications is automatically qualified for property. After teaching bhakti yoga to Arjuna, Krishna recognized that Arjuna was grieved because he lacked patience and capacity to perform it. Right? So Arjuna was male. Arjuna was a Kshatriya, right? He was, according to Vedanta Deshika, he's qualified to perform bhakti yoga, but he was impatient. And he felt that he lacked capacity to do those things, karma yoga, jnana yoga, and bhakti yoga, because he felt that those things, that there was a mountain of sins from previous lives that was stopping him from performing these things properly. He even asked the question to Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, what happens to a person who takes two paths that you've been explaining to me and doesn't complete them, doesn't finish them, doesn't do them perfectly? At the end of this life, what happens to him? Arjuna says, does that person perish like a riven cloud? He says, he asked Krishna this. If he's asking Krishna, it means he's thinking that this is my position. So Krishna says, he comes back in his next life and he starts off from where he left off and he gets, he has to finish up that life. That's what Krishna says. So it's already been discussed by Arjuna. Krishna knows his mentality already. Why would he ask, what happens if I fail? Why would Arjuna ask Krishna, what happens if I fail? Because he's thinking he's going to fail. Because he's doubting that he can do these things. As soon as you doubt, you become eligible, and in fact, you must perform property. As soon as you doubt that you can completely, perfectly do bhakti yoga, it's your duty to give it up and to do property. Right? If there's two roads that lead to Rome, right? And on one of the roads you see detour. If you see a big sign that says detour, you must take the other road. And this is what happens. As soon as you realize that there's a detour, as soon as you realize that you cannot make it by going on that path, you must take the other path. You have to take the other path. Only a stupid person would continue to try to take the path which is blocked. There may be many roads that lead to Rome, but if they're all blocked, what's the use of them? There may be many ways to reach liberation in the Shastras, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, but if once you realize they're blocked, then you have to take the other one. You've got to take the other one. Either that or you keep hitting a wall. Only a stupid person keeps going down a road when there's a big sign, this road is blocked, bridge is out, right? When you're going down the road and see a big sign, bridge has been washed away, stop. Do you continue going and fall into the river because you go over the bridge which is broken? No, you have to stop and you have to go to the detour. You have to go to the safe way. You have to go the sure way, the safe way, the quick way. It just so happens it's a quicker way, right? Who would not do property? Who would continue to do these other things? Even they're given in the scriptures. Even Lord Krishna says to do them himself. Who would do those things having once realized that there is a quicker, easier, and surer way? Who would do that? Somebody stupid. But guess what? We're all here in this material world. We're all covered by different amounts of false ego, of ignorance. So yeah, we're stupid. We're here in this material world. We wouldn't be drowning unless we're stupid, right? The person who doesn't know how to swim doesn't go swimming. That's our position. We thought that we could swim even though we don't know how to swim, and we went swimming and therefore we're drowning. Now, if we don't realize we're drowning, we're going to drown. As soon as we realize that we're drowning, right, then we think, maybe I can save myself. But if we're really intelligent, we realize we can't save ourselves from this material world. So Krishna is the one who can save us. Once we stop struggling, he'll save us. But it depends upon us. We have to first of all realize that he can save us and realize that he will save us even if we give up struggling. If we think, no, we have to keep struggling. What did Draupadi do? Draupadi, they were trying to rip her sari off. They were trying to strip her naked in the assembly. They were trying to pull the sari. She was twirling around. They were taking the sari off her like that. She was trying to hold the sari back. Anybody would do that. In the beginning, anybody would do that, right? Try to hold the sari on to try to stop being stripped naked. Yeah, stop. But she's a woman. There are a bunch of guys pulling on a sari, a bunch of big kshatriyas. How can she think of even trying to resist like that? So instead, ultimately, initially she thought she could save herself. Just like Arjuna. Initially, he approached Krishna and said, please explain things to me. And Krishna explained different things. But then he realized at a certain point, I can't do this. And Draupadi also, she realized, I can't do this. I can't stop these people from ripping my sari off. What am I going to do? So she put her hands up and completely surrendered. Gave up struggling. And Krishna saved her. Did Krishna save her before that? Krishna could have saved her in the beginning, right in the beginning. Right, as soon as they started taking her sari, Krishna could have saved her. Why didn't Krishna save her immediately? Why doesn't the lifeguard immediately save the person who's drowning? Why the person who's struggling, who's panicking? If, as a lifeguard, if I go and I approach a person who's struggling, that person has adrenaline going in their body. They can punch me, they can hit me, they can knock me out, and I'll drown. Of course, the Lord's never going to drown. But the analogy is, if somebody's trying to save somebody from drowning, he has to wait until that person gives up struggling. So Krishna only saved Draupadi when she gave up struggling. We have to give up struggling. This Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga is just struggling. And in fact, it's a sin, according to Tengalaya Acharyas. It's a sin, right? It's a sin. For the person who's trying to save the person who's drowning, all of this struggling and hysteria and panicking that the person is doing is actually a waste of time for the person trying to save you. What does the lifeguard yell out to you? Stop panicking. Stop struggling. Stop panicking. I'll save you. If you're in the water and you're 10 feet away from the person, you're 5 feet away from the person, just out of reach of their arms, you want to stay right outside their reach of their arms, because if you get inside and they're panicking, they'll hit you. This is what rescue divers do. You go there and you wait until they stop struggling, then you approach them and you save them. But as long as they're struggling, you can't save them. No, it's dangerous to save them. So it's actually, and then you can say to the person, you idiot, just stop. What you're doing is detrimental to you being saved. You want to be saved, but you're struggling. Stop it. Stop struggling and be saved. It's the struggling which is causing you to drown. Anyway, so after teaching Bhakti Yoga to Arjuna, Krishna recognized that Arjuna was grieved because he lacked the patience and capacity to perform it. Thus the Lord said, having relinquished all dharmas, that is Bhakti Yoga and its ancillaries, meaning Jnana Yoga and Karma Yoga, resort to me alone as a refuge. That is, perform property. The alternate upaya, the alternative, the positive alternative is property. We've discussed Sarvadhamam Prityaja, and now we're going to discuss in the next class, we'll discuss Mam Ekam Sharanam Vaja, the next point in Charma Sloka. It takes a little time. The whole Charma Sloka is a lot to discuss in one session. So thank you very much.